Executive of Suffolk County Council, and I'm the co-chair of the Digital Inclusion Network, along with my colleague Nick Khan from East Suffolk Council. I think it's also on the call this morning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to start with a little bit of context to digital inclusion. And those people who have come across me before will know sort of like I'm sort of like quite a passionate advocate of using technology sort of like for public services and for service delivery like generally. So again, I'm going to rattle through sort of like a few slides with you this morning. So I just wanted to start with this one. So this is talking about sort of like the prevalence of internet usage across the UK from relatively recent data, and you can see the fact that those that use it infrequently or never use the internet infrequently or never has been falling for a number of years and is a relatively low level. Although still 10% of us. I think the interesting thing for me here is Suffolk in 2013. Dipped below the line in 2016 in terms of those not using it, and then it's just gone slightly above that East of England average and the UK average in yellow. So effectively, more people in Suffolk at the moment are not using the internet frequency or haven't used it over the last 3 months. So there's something interesting, I think, about trends in this. Although again, bear in mind the pandemic may well have had an effect on that, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The next slide again, and we'll send the slides around so people can have a look at them in a bit more detail, is really about the reasons for households not having the internet and what people have said. And I found this quite interesting the first time I saw it. In that top reason for those that don't have it, explaining why they didn't have it, is they didn't need it. And they couldn't see it being useful or interesting. And I think whilst that's generally an interesting trend, I think one of the reasons the Digital Inclusion Network has got going is because it is useful, it is interesting, and probably increasingly necessary. Which is sort of like something I'll come on and talk about, but some quite interesting things there. Be really interesting now to have a look at that yellow line, access costs too high. You can see it was increasing from 2017 to 2019. Be really interesting to see where that plays out with the cost of living increase and that. And that's something that the network has talked about quite a lot. But again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I just wanted to sort of like talk about one of the myths that sort of like we talked about quite early on in the work of the Digital Inclusion Network, because surely the reason that most people sort of like don't access the internet is because they can't connect. And connectivity is a problem. And in 2011, that would have been true. And as you can see here, this was Suffolk in 2011. Green is 20 megabits per second plus, and I know Fran will remember these slides very well, probably. And yellow is probably the one to look at. Is maybe yellow is not having anything. Yellow, pink, or red would be not having a usable broadband connection. So when you look at that in 2011, the majority of Suffolk probably didn't have a usable broadband connection for what we want to do. And this is the situation sort of like today. So you can see in those areas of dark green, 100% of those households will get 30 megabits per second plus. In the light green, 75 to 100%. And then, we still have work to do in some of those areas. You'll see those pink areas. And again, for those who are interested, there is another round of Better Broadband Programme going on at the moment, will complete at the end of this year. And then there's a national project called Project Gigabit, which will continue to sort of like work on that sort of like upgrade. And, we're talking now about sort of like fibre connectivity to households now in the UK. But the broadband sort of like situation is much better than it was in 2011. So why does all this matter? Why are we bothered about it? Isn't it an individual's choice about whether they access sort of like the internet or not? I'm not going to run through all the text on here, but the top point I wanted to highlight is because so much now is done digitally, especially following COVID-19, you're more likely to be disadvantaged and excluded if you're not online. And I think that's the bottom line for us as councils, and probably for all of us as organisations, is because of that growth in digital service provision, it really means that we want people to be online. And I hear much more a conversation about getting people online than I do that question that maybe we, might be in the back of your mind at the moment, that have been asked before, is, well, what about those people that aren't online? I think it isn't about providing services for those who aren't online anymore. It's trying to get those to access it, or to find a way of mediating that access. And I'll say a little bit more about mediated access later. The one line I will pull out here, which is the one in the middle, and I know Nicola Jenna from the skills team is going to talk a little bit later about this. The benefits of basic digital skills training outweighs the costs involved. The boost in tax receipts and NHS savings alone exceed the investment required. And I think that's a really interesting sort of economic statement about the importance of kind of digital and being able to access things digitally. So why the Digital Inclusion Network? So during COVID-19, the Collaborative Communities Board, people may have seen this. This was a tweet that sort of was doing the rounds a little bit. Who led the digital transformation of your company? Was it your charismatic CEO leading from the front? Was it a far-sighted chief technology officer, who had all these ideas? And I think no, the answer is probably it was COVID-19, and it was the fact that everybody was suddenly working from home. You had remote learning. Payments were being made over the line, data was being sort of shared to target sort of interventions in communities. So COVID really did accelerate that move online, and the Collaborative Communities Board kind of identified digital and technology, access to technology as a key strand of the work. And Nick Khan led that conversation within the Collaborative Communities Board, and Nick and I had a conversation about what could we do about it. And there's so much work underway, so many organizations, schools looking to get sort of kit out to children, home care agencies using sort of technology, children's social care starting to use WhatsApp in terms of communicating with sort of families. There was so much underway. It was, well, how do we coordinate this? How do we make the best of this? And the Digital Inclusion Network was started. So in terms of what the network is, just want to give you a bit of flavor. So the network is not a program board. Need to be really, really clear. It doesn't have its own set of projects necessarily. It is very much a network. It's an open network. Anybody can join. More than welcome. I mean, we've been meeting monthly for an hour. We've just agreed that maybe the urgency around meeting for an hour and doing that coordination work has been replaced by a need to spend a little bit more time and delve into more topics. But it's a group of people who are enablers, coordinators, data providers, signposters, bidders, funders, and people who have access to sort of those with digital need, who have access, who can provide front doors or can provide solutions and provide solutions. So again, that's the group of people that we're looking to get to. Often we talk about work that's already underway. An organisation in Suffolk or a national organisation may talk about something that's going on, and we want to sort of make front doors aware of it. We want to signpost it. We want to connect people up. Sometimes we'll commission new work. You'll hear about digital champions. You'll hear about the laptop loan scheme from libraries. You'll hear about all the stuff that's kind of gone on and been linked in or stimulated sort of by a conversation at the Digital Inclusion Network. And again, I'd encourage people to join and add. I'll hold my hands up here. The County Council is one of the worst organisations at this in terms of reinventing something that's going on rather than putting their weight behind something that already exists. And I think in the Digital Inclusion Network, what we've really tried to do is to emphasise there are things that are already going on and exist, and it would be much better to support those sometimes than invent a new channel. The children's learning stuff was really interesting during COVID, in that the number of schools that wanted their students to use Google Chromebooks because that was they used the Google Learning platform, and we had lots of well-meaning parents gathering laptops and schools slightly turning their noses up and saying, well, it's a bit old, and well, it won't work with Google Learning. And so again, we need to make sure that we're listening to those who are providing the services and sort of jumping on board rather maybe than inventing sort of new solutions. So again, that's a bit of a plug for sort of how the network works. Very, very quickly, we came up with a vision. about working together. So, to promote and enable digital access for those who want it. Again, it's still a choice, but then to provide mediated access for those who do not want it, because so much is going on in terms of designing for digital, not digital by default, but people are designing sort of like services digitally. And I think we need to work out for those who cannot or do not want it, how we mediate and we still use that digital channel. So that's why front doors are quite important. And I know Nick and the team at East Suffolk have done a fantastic job through Emma and the customer service centre to try and sort of like mediate access for those who maybe can't access it, but still use a digital channel. So that people in Suffolk can use technology and internet to access digital solutions and keep themselves safe, productive, and well in a connected world. So that's the vision that we're trying to promote as a digital inclusion network. In terms of this, the structure of the conversations, we've done some research, desktop research, and looking at what's going on. And digital inclusion projects tend to fall into sort of like themes, about skills and knowledge, about financial inclusion, inequality, deprivation, about access to kit, about infrastructure and connectivity. But that one about trust, inclination, and confidence is really important. Now, how do we do that? And you'll hear a bit about Digital Champions, which is a fantastic initiative in terms of trying to support people to maybe just take that first step and go online, and maybe even if they have to keep that level of confidence, to encourage them to repeat. The other thing is it happens in places. It happens in groups of people. It happens in older people. So communities of interest, those in deprivation, particular geographies, or adults with learning disabilities. There's a whole sort of like range of ways that you can target some of the projects. And again, some of the tea and tech sessions that you'll hear about have really sort of like worked on that basis. But so again, it isn't necessarily about a program board. It's about kind of like identifying maybe gaps where the Digital Inclusion Network can help. Obviously, it's got some funders on there and some people who can access funding, as well as sort of like project providers. The last couple of slides. So, we did a bit of a review post-COVID and said, what's the learning from what we've done so far? People really valued the existence of a network, just the opportunity to go somewhere and know that if they raised it, probably somebody on the network would be able to connect them to somebody useful. It's raised a lot of awareness about what's going on in Suffolk. And again, we're still trying to work through a mapping process to maybe map some of these projects so people can see it visually, working very closely with the NHS on that. It's enabled people to make new connections, certainly in the children's space and school space. It's enabled us to make some new connections with sort of like between useful organisations and make some of those links. I think a couple of reflections. Who else could we look to invite? Often I think probably every meeting somebody says, "Oh, I know somebody who's doing this." And we say, "Oh, invite them along. It'd be really good to hear about that." And again, you're going to hear from some of those people this morning. And then there's always capacity challenges. There's always things that get in the way of doing stuff and of attending sometimes. And again, we've tried to maintain that momentum. One of the reasons for changing the approach is just to maybe create a slightly different. Whilst an hour a month isn't a lot. Again, I think people's priorities have shifted sort of like, as we move out of that COVID era, and said it would be much more valuable to spend a bit more time on more topics rather than rush through an update. So we're going to be doing that in the future. And in terms of what we're going to be doing this year, we're going to continue to be the digital network. So that's really important. One of the things that people said is just, it's good to have it. It's good to have it. It's good to know that there's something there. Digital Champions, you'll hear a bit more about that, but deliver that project because it's really important and capture that initial impact. Continue to share case studies from digital inclusion projects nationally. We've had Leeds down as an exemplar to talk to us about what they've done in Leeds. Fantastic, different environment completely, but lots to learn from other places in the UK. And we're part of the National Digital Inclusion Network, and Jenna has presented to that network, and people are quite impressed with what's going on in Suffolk as well, which is really good. To try and attract some national digital inclusion charities to Suffolk. and I know we've got good things on the call later on. Really, doing fantastic work across the UK, and really pleased to be involved with them, and just take that opportunity for co-production and learning. Learning from residents, from customers, from partners about what works. And the last thing I just wanted to finish off and is, despite being a champion for sort of like digital, I really don't like the word digital. It really, again, it's a really difficult word. And that thing at the top for me is, it's about services, not the means. So digital is a channel. So digital is technology plus something, plus the delivery of remote care, the delivery of kind of like an access channel for services. So again, whilst it's really, really important, it's important to remember that it's not just about technology for the sake of technology. It's about the services and delivery. But really looking forward to hearing sort of like some of the presenters this morning, and I know Nick's going to close and we'll talk a little bit more about the network at the end, but happy to answer any questions in chat, or you can drop me an email at the County Council, chris.bally@suffolk.gov.uk. But I will hand back to you, Fran.
Thank you. A really good setting of the context for our event today. Thank you, Chris. Just one thing, would everybody please drop their name and organisation into the chat? And would you also indicate if you have any objection to being recorded today? I should have said this at the beginning because we are recording the event, but obviously we can remove your details from that. So our next speaker is Bruce Leake, who is Chief Exec of Suffolk Libraries. They've been doing some really interesting work with digital inclusion. Chris alluded to it in his talk. So over to you, Bruce. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. So thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our work. And then during the rest of the presentation today, you'll hear about many things that either happen in the library or are happening in partnership with Suffolk Libraries. So hopefully that'll give you a bit more of a flavour of, in more detail, of some of the things I'm going to talk about. So firstly, just to highlight that Suffolk Libraries is the independent charity that runs library services across Suffolk. We have 44 physical libraries, as well as 3 mobile vehicles and 2 pop-ups. This year is our 10th anniversary as a charity, and we're celebrating that on the 1st of August. And what we do is what we call the extraordinary everyday. We do lots of very everyday stuff with people, but we make a big impact on their lives in all sorts of different ways. And as a charity, we've really benefited from being independent. We now have longer opening hours than we had before. We do dozens more services than we did before becoming independent. We're the only UK library service with its own wellbeing service, which is particularly important and against the context of some of the things I'm going to say later. We do that all for less taxpayers' money, which is great. So Chris has already touched on some stats. I've got some slightly older ones than the ones that he presented to you, but really what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to do is show you in context sort of the scale of the challenge in Suffolk. So Chris had some figures that went up to 2020. The only ones I could find went up to 2018. And basically some of the sort of research that ONS have done showed that in 2018, 10% of the adult population in the UK had never used the internet or hadn't used it recently. And that's obviously a large amount of people. Then there's some stats in context for the East of England there in the same period. And it's as Chris showed on some of his slides, it's a reducing continuum in the sense that more people are getting online, but that makes it starker for the people who actually aren't connected. And so if you extrapolate the stats that I've put there on the first slide into the context of Suffolk, in 2018, you had nearly 70,000 people who were non-internet users, 152,000 who don't have 5 basic digital skills, and that would be things like being able to use a mouse, navigate themselves around the screen, using a keyboard, stuff like that. And then nearly 61,000 people with no basic digital skills. And as Chris has highlighted, there are lots of different reasons for that, and it's a very complex area. But as you can see from those numbers, that's quite a substantial amount of people. So that's kind of one of the reasons that we are one of the fulcrums for supporting people with the support of Suffolk County Council in helping them get digital access and helping them feel included. But the first place I'm going to start by is describing why people come to libraries. And one of the main reasons people come to libraries is because we're one of those institutions in the world that people understand in the context of books. We have this very sort of safe, neutral and non-judgmental ability to engage with people. People come to us for all sorts of different reasons, books being one of them, but we do all sorts of other stuff now. But you can come to the space for anything. So there isn't that stigma that comes with going to certain places for certain types of things. And that's why we're a really great low stakes way of engaging people. We also have dozens of skilled staff and colleagues who can help support people as when they come on site. They're all very well trained in helping and supporting people in communities. And we have a vast digital estate that Suffolk County Council has recently helped us to repurpose, where we have in some of our larger sites around sort of 30 public access PCs, and some of the smaller ones will have 1 or 2. And all of our sites have free Wi-Fi. So they're a really, really good place to come, get online, and also get some support from some very well qualified professional staff. And I'll talk about some of the specific things we do to help support people in a minute. And then also we're at the heart of every significant Suffolk community. So we have those 44 sites that I described earlier. And one of the key things about our service and the fact that we're a charity is that each one of our individual sites is empowered to work with the local community and develop services that meet the needs of those community. And in some senses, that may be in relation to digital access, but it can be in relation to anything. And I'll talk about sort of wraparound support later, because a big part of this whole challenge, as Chris alluded to earlier, is helping support people to get the skills, but also mainly to have the confidence and understand some of the other challenges that they face in the context of their life more broadly. So just some stats here quickly that I'll run through to show you the scale of usage of libraries and people's usage, particularly of the digital assets. So we had in the last reporting year, which is 2021-22, we had about 80,000 people using our public computers. Sorry, 80,000 sessions of people using the public computers. And that's gone down slightly as a result. Before COVID, we would have had probably a slightly larger number, but it's still a substantial amount, and more people are starting to come back to do those things they did before. But as with all organisations, there's been a bit of a sort of slow burn in that area. And that equated to about 51,000 hours of usage across the reporting year. And then there's some stats at the end of some of the things that people were most likely to use the PCs for. So there of those instances, 13,000 were related to homework, study, or research. 11,000 were for job searching applications or CVs, and about 5,000 for universal credit applications. But it's not just on site that we help people, and Chris alluded to it earlier. Our work in the Digital Inclusion Network very much started off with a scheme that we originally called Device to Your Door, which came about during I think it was the second COVID lockdown, where we were able to source some funding for 100 laptops and accompanying 4G dongles. And then we set up a service, because our physical library buildings weren't open. We set up a service where people could call us, and then a colleague would either cycle or drive to an address of somebody who had ordered a laptop, and they'd be able to borrow a laptop for a period of time. And that usually was to enable them to do something like a universal credit application or a job search, or mainly during the COVID lockdowns to have access to things like a GP appointment online and stuff like that. So from that service, more laptop loans that you can see on the screen there, and we've been developing the service. We now have 650 regular users of that service who borrow a laptop and a 4G dongle for 2 weeks at a time. And one of the real challenges there, and I'll allude to this later as well, was to actually, especially during the lockdown, was to engage with people who had that need and get them to understand that we were there and offering the service. And we actually worked with a lot of partners, food banks and others, to distribute physical leaflets. And then we also did a massive leaflet, 100,000 home leaflet drop in some of the most socially deprived wards of Suffolk, to try and get the message out there, because obviously if you're not online, it's no good tweeting about it on social media or in other places, although we did do that in the hope that we get some referrals. You have to be much more sort of boots on the ground and get the word out there to people, either through word of mouth or through sort of physical collateral. We also have a scheme that we run with Bayberg and Mid Suffolk District Council, who have supported us in providing some tablets that we loan. They also provide a little bit of training as well alongside those, and that's a scheme that's developing at the moment. We also do loan out tablets as well at other sites, and this is another challenge which Chris alluded to earlier. Some of the technology we use for those tablet loans is a little bit outdated now, so people don't necessarily want it. So the other thing about technology is that you need to continue to keep reinvesting in it, because otherwise it becomes outdated very quickly. So in terms of skills and support, and I'm gonna skip through this relatively quickly, because I've got Tracy from Communities Together East Anglia after me, who's going to talk about tea and tech. And I'll touch on that scheme, but Tracy will go into more detail in a minute. We have a national partnership with National Barclays Bank, and we use quite a lot of their packages to help train our staff. We also do a number of other things with them, but we have a large number of our team who are Digital Eagles trainers, which is a specialist training package which is designed to enable older people to get online. We have digital skills volunteers operating at a number of our sites. We have a reasonably large sort of volunteering setup at Suffolk Library. It's got about 1,200 active volunteers, and a number of those are digital skills trainers who work with people at those local sites and help support them to develop their confidence, but also to upskill them. We're also going to hear later about the Digital Champion Scheme, and it was set up by Suffolk County Council. We're also part of that, so a number of our colleagues have been trained up as part of that scheme as well. And they, again, are enabled to be able to help and support people whenever they can to be more skilled in terms of using tech. And then Tea and Tech, which is a scheme which is run by Communities Together East Anglia in partnership with libraries and a number of other organisations, including Suffolk County Council, is a scheme where they bring people together at the moment in a library setting, but also in other places, and enable them as a group to develop their skills, confidence, and the main thing is to just build a network where people can, through a peer group, support each other as well. So Tracy will talk about that in more detail in a minute. And so this is the bigger picture part of this as well, which Chris alluded to, and this is probably as important as anything, because you can provide people with the devices. You can people learn in different ways, so you can sit down with them 10 times, they may still not have picked up the points you're trying to get across to them, or the points they need to learn. So what we think we do really well is we help support people build that confidence through the peer networks that we have. We have loads of different regular activities that we host, and through those we have something called Top Time, which is targeted at over 55s, and that is a typical sort of group that would come together on a weekly basis, very similarly to Tea and Tech. There's the opportunity to benefit from a network, but also to work with peers to sort of overcome your challenges and build your confidence. And then in a broader sense, we also provide a lot of emotional support in terms of our wellbeing service I alluded to earlier. We run that with Suffolk Mind, Suffolk Family Carers, and a couple of other partners. We run a number of different services across that. But again, a lot of the work we do there is to help people get into a space where they're able to help themselves. And a lot of that's about things like encouraging them to become included through digital access and become included in the world in all sorts of other ways. We also do some very specific projects. And at the moment, we're running what's called a health literacy pilot in Haverhill with Health Education England. And the idea of that is that we go out into the community, go to various different local groups, talk to people about their understanding of how they can get good health information. And then we bring them back to the library, show them some of the resources there, show them some of the good places they can go for really good health information. And there's an element of that that's also about digital inclusion, getting people to understand how they can get online and where they can access that information. And we do lots of different types, flavors of projects like that link into digital inclusion as well, because it's not just about badging it, as Chris said earlier, about digital inclusion, it's about understanding it in the context of the individual. And then there's also lots of other wraparound support that we provide around things like financial well-being, again, which has an element of getting online involved in it. And we also work very closely with the Money Advice and Pension Service to help with support and training to help people become more financially literate. And a lot of that happens online as well. I could go through dozens of different schemes we run that sort of all link into digital inclusion, but that's just a small sample of some of the ways that we help people and provide that wraparound service. And so last couple of slides, in terms of the challenges, and I've alluded to some of these already, you know, I think there's really an opportunity to have a more joined up approach. I don't think it would take a great deal of funding, because as Chris has highlighted already, there's a lot of things out there. It's more about joining them up and creating a greater level of awareness of what's available in different communities. And I also think there's a potential to engage, and Chris alluded to this as well, talking to national partners, but also looking at some of the local businesses that have sort of some gains to make in this space, who would benefit from partnering and supporting people possibly through their CSR agenda. Businesses like BT, Use Electrical, and some of the council's partners like City Fibre may well be able to help sort of conjoin a bigger package of support for people that can be delivered through anchor institutions like libraries or the Citizens Advice Bureau or other places. So that is definitely a worthwhile bigger conversation to have, and would be a really great way of growing capacity and a bigger offer for everybody. I've already alluded to this, but digitally excluded people are quite hard to reach. In the libraries, we're in a really good place to reach those people, because we see a lot of those audiences already who come to us naturally. But, you know, obviously we can't reach everybody. And as I've already said, if you don't have a device, it's very hard to engage with somebody through social media, which is probably the cheapest way of doing that. So it's actually quite an expensive process of engaging with those people and contacting them. So a lot of that's about partnerships and working with partners who do have access to those people to help support that join up and raise that awareness. And I think that's the final point in there, is making those partnerships long-term, not just having a short-term solution where there's a project that's funded for a short period of time. It's about making a long-term intervention and understanding, with a group of partners working together, the best ways to help and support the challenges communities face who are digitally isolated. So obviously I'm going to say there's lots of opportunities in libraries. We have that captive audience I talked about for many different groups. One of the main ones in terms of older people is, I've already mentioned, the top time groups we run, and that sees nearly 700 people coming together every week across our sites in a shared network that enables them to befriend, but also to work together to understand challenges they have. The power of our network and its breadth and width enables us to really get into communities, and particularly reaching sort of seldom heard or hard to reach groups. I've already talked about our skilled staff. We have a wonderful staff team who are very devoted to their communities and supporting the best outcomes for them. And they provide those wraparound services I've talked about earlier. So we're a really great place to sort of take it to that next level and help people build their confidence. And then finally, I just think there is this big opportunity through the Digital Inclusion Network, and all of the partners are involved in that, but also through drawing on people at this event today and other parts of the community to come up with a sort of bigger picture partnership that people are aware of, that helps everybody to get connected should they need to get connected. So that's all I had to say today. I'm happy to, again, like Chris, you can contact me via email, because I don't think there's going to be time for questions, at bruce.leeke, which is LEEKE, at suffolklibraries.co.uk, or just drop Fran a note, and I'm sure she'd be happy to sort of pass any questions on. So thank you for your time today, and pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Bruce. That's a really interesting picture of how the library service is driving digital inclusion in our communities. And we now have Tracy Walsh, who is the digital coordinator for VCSE, on digital champions that Bruce mentioned during his presentation. So over to you, Tracy.
Good morning, everyone. This is a presentation I'm doing with Jenna, and for those of you who don't know yet, VCSE, we are now rebranded, and we're called Communities Together East Anglia. That only happened literally a week and a half ago. So yeah, that's us, and Jenna is joining me today as our project is a joint partnership. So I'm going to start off with you, Jenna, if you're there.
Hello, good morning everybody. Thank you for having us this morning. So yeah, I'm going to give a really quick introduction to the Digital Champions work, and then I'm going to hand over to Tracy, who's going to be talking about the work that Communities Together East Anglia are doing with volunteer digital champions in the community. So Tracy, could we have the first slide, please?
Yep.
Thank you. So the Digital Champions project has been running for about a year now. We received funding at the start of last year to run a Digital Champions pilot project within Suffolk. So there are Digital Champions projects running all over the country nationally, and they are supported in general by an organisation called Digital Unite. So Digital Unite are a national charity who provide digital champions training all throughout the country. And we partnered with them at the start of last year to do a bit of a pilot Digital Champions project in Suffolk. And what we wanted to know was, would a Digital Champions approach work within Suffolk? So Digital Champions are generally people who want to help others go online safely and successfully if they want to. You don't need to be an IT whiz to be a digital champion. You just need a bit of time and enthusiasm to support others to experience all of the benefits of going online and of using online services. So our Digital Champions project is a collaborative digital skills development project between partnership organisations across Suffolk. We started last year working with the customer services team at East Suffolk Council, the customer services team at Faber and Mid Suffolk Council, front of house staff at Suffolk Libraries, and the team at Communities Together East Anglia. And what we aimed to do was roll out the light touch digital skills training that's offered by Digital Unite, and to build a bit of a network of knowledge really of people that wanted to volunteer to support other people to go online and make the best use of online services. So what the project aims to do is to provide access to free digital skills training and digital resources via the online Digital Unite Digital Champions platform. We want to support individuals within partner organisations and community volunteers to develop their own digital knowledge and skills so that they can then support others to learn the basics around going online, using computers and using the internet in a really relaxed, informal way. We've currently got 42 digital champions across our partner organisations, and between them they've completed 279 light touch digital skills training courses. And the network really is going from strength to strength. We're looking at doing some work with the customer services team at West Suffolk Council now to really kind of spread the reach of the training and to get more digital champions on board and supporting people to go online. We've also started working with Communities Together East Anglia on a community volunteering digital champions project. So this is working with people in the community that have some spare time, are enthusiastic about the benefits of going online and using digital technology, who want to learn a little bit more about that process and about how to upskill their own skills in this area, so that they can then go on to support other people to go online and make the best use of digital technology. And this is where I'm going to hand over to Tracy, who's going to talk a little bit about our volunteering community aspect of this work. So Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, Jenna. So many of you may have seen this poster floating around, and as you know, Jenna and I joint partnership last summer when we joined Communities Together East Anglia, joined the network, and we were already starting to think about some face-to-face community work. So we formed a partnership with Suffolk County Council, and after a lot of planning and debating, we finally our project was born. And so from our point of view as a charity, we onboard volunteers. For us, we've got digital champion volunteers, and as Jenna explained, they're exactly the same as what I call in-house digital champions that work for the councils, front of house, libraries, etc., except they're a volunteer basis. How they work with us is that us at Communities Together will onboard them, we will DBS them, give them ID, safeguard them, etc., give them all the training support that they need as a volunteer to be out in the community representing us and delivering the digital champion work. So yeah, that's kind of what we are doing with them. We currently have 8 onboarded digital champions who are fully out in the community supporting our projects, which obviously what I'm going to go on to next. But one thing I am going to touch on, obviously we are recruiting volunteers, and one thing we are asked at when we do a lot of forums and networks is there are a lot of digital champions who are what I call in-house members. So they are already currently doing this in their day-to-day role, and you know, they often ask, oh, I wonder if I'm allowed sort of out of my day job to come and support a community event once a month for 2 hours. So we've had a couple of people step forward and they have been supported. So it would be really, really nice to see as and when people are able to come along and support an event. That'd be absolutely amazing, because it is very different delivering in a community, you know, in a community setting. So what are we currently doing at Communities Together? So we offer a phone support service. So initially people phone up and we'll have a conversation with them, and that is where we get to the real crux of what they need. You know, are they needing a device? Are they at the start of their digital journey? Have they got a device, but actually they're not really sure how to use it? Or actually they have some knowledge and they just need a question answered over the phone. So that is really that first point of call with us. And from that conversation, we can really direct and refer to where we go. So we also, as we've talked a lot about, I'll go a bit further with Tier Tech in a minute on the next slide, but we also offer one-to-one face-to-face support, and we also offer access to tablet courses. And the tablet course is a project we are in partnership with Realise Futures, which I'm sure many of you have come across, and it means that we offer, at the moment I'm offering 4 locations for 3 times a year, and that means that we can get people aged over the age of 55 plus to go along to a tablet course. It's a 6-week course and it's once a week for 2 hours, and it really starts at the beginning of their journey. They get given a device, which is an Amazon Fire tablet, and they actually get to keep that once they finish the course. And it gives them from literally how to turn on that tablet to what the functionality of that tablet is, and actually gets them online. So it's a very basic start, but it is a start of their journey, and it does mean they can walk away with that device, and it means they can continue their digital journey from there. So this is what our digital champions, our volunteers, are currently doing. They're doing phone support, they're doing one-to-one face-to-face support for those who can't attend the Tea & Tech, who can't access the tablet course, or maybe they've done both and they still need that one-to-one time. So this is what our digital champions are doing out in the community currently at the moment. So I'm now going to go and talk about Tea & Tech. This is our really new pilot that went out in April. It wanted to go, we wanted a community, you know, digital platform to happen. And so we picked Stowmarket Library as our pilot session. And people asked me why I wanted to use libraries, because we could have gone anywhere. We could have gone into community halls or CAFs or anywhere. I wanted to use the libraries because I'd been there. I thought it was a nice, safe space, people to go in. They felt comfortable about walking into a library. So my vision was, why not use the library to deliver these sessions in the public areas, which we have, and Stowmarket have kindly been our pilot. We're running 5 sessions there, and the idea is that we run 5 sessions at every library, and if they're successful, then they will continue there and be part of the events. So you can see on the slide, there are a number of libraries that we hopefully will run these sessions going forward, but they will all be dependent on digital champion volunteers and people from in-house organisations coming forward and supporting these. And obviously there are some individuals bespoke sessions that will happen as well in other areas, such as the Unity Centre in Ipswich and Framlingham and Woodbridge have reached out, groups there that want us to run bespoke Tea & Tech sessions there. So what does it mean by Tea & Tech? Basically, it is a 2-hour session once a month in a location. So we'll take Stowmarket, for instance, where people can book on, come along to the session with their device, or if they don't have a device and they're again at the start of their journey, we have a pool of equipment that we take with us. So they have the opportunity to have a go on a smartphone, they have an opportunity to go on a tablet, and also we are incorporating the library. So we're encouraging them to use the loaning schemes, the laptops and the iPad loan scheme. You know, so the idea is they can come along and let's have a conversation about your digital journey. What do they want to get from the session? How can we help them? How can we upskill them and make their life a little bit better? So this is what the sessions are. They're very relaxed, hence the tea and tech. There is coffee as well, by the way. But, you know, people can come along, have a cup of tea. It's a social element for them. It will also look like a bit of befriending. People make relationships, we'll swap details and, you know, meet outside of these sessions. So it's a really nice safe space to make this happen. And so this tea and tech will hopefully roll out through the county at different locations as and when we can obviously get the volunteers involved. So a little bit of fun facts for you, just because I put them together the other day. So we've only run 3 sessions. In them 3 sessions, we've supported over 20 people at the Tea and Tech. We've run 4 one-to-one sessions since April, outside of any other session. And we've supported over 57 people since September last year, actually going on a tablet course, and then 57 people now have a device and you're using them. So that was just a little bit of fun facts I put together, obviously, since we've been doing our digital inclusion program. And obviously, if you need more information from Jenna or myself, there's our details on the screen, and of course the slides will be shared afterwards. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jenna and Tracy. We have some time now for a few questions, and we actually have one that's a carryover from the question from the last session, a question for Tracy. And the question is, I think you can see in the chat, why were those particular libraries chosen for Tea and Tech?
So at Communities Together East Anglia, we do a lot of work along the East Coast. We try to pick areas that are highlighted that may be more in need. Obviously, my CEO can answer why they came about and how they got to them, but these were the areas that we're doing the most work in. And these are the areas that reached out and need a bit more support. And so that is why we've picked these ones, but it's not, you know, we hope that the 7 will grow into 14, which will grow and grow and grow. It's like a wheel with spokes. I think Jenna said to me once that, you know, this is just the centerpiece, and we hope by getting all the volunteers, we can reach out to as many people as we need. But like I said before, libraries are a safe space. People don't mind, you know, especially because we're reaching out to the elderly, you know, they don't mind walking into a library. They feel quite comfortable in doing that. And the feedback we've had is that they like the space. They like being able to access that. And then what we encourage after that is for them to go back into the library with their device, you know, and use it, because libraries are not a quiet space no more, is what I'm being told by Ursula and Crystal and Bruce. Is these are community hubs now. People can have conversations in them, people can chat and laugh. It's not about going in there and just being quiet, you know. And a lot of that was quite evident when we first started these. People were like, oh, we can't talk, we must be really quiet. Well, actually, you can actually have a conversation. So this was a really nice, it's a really nice space. So that's really why, but it's not bespoke to them. We can go other places. This is a really nice lift up template that we can take and pop wherever we like. So hopefully that's answered the question.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Tracy. And if I open it up to everyone, does anyone have any burning questions, please? Corinne, I can see your hand.
Thank you. Yes, hi. I run the Good Neighbour scheme in Orford, and I also run the social club in Orford. And everything I've read so far has been sort of town centric. Libraries, fantastic. I get their safe spaces. Orford is 18-mile round trip from a library in Woodbridge. People can't at the moment necessarily afford to run a car, or they can't even have a car to go there. I want to do something smaller, but within Orford. Where do I go for help to do that?
Right, if I open to the room, does anyone have any suggestions? Is there any possibility for outreach, for instance, from libraries? Bruce? I think Bruce might have gone.
I'm happy to jump in and take this one if that's helpful.
Yes, please, Jenna, that would be wonderful.
So I've been doing a lot of work with Orford Museum. And you know, really understand what you're saying, Corinne, in terms of kind of the rurality of Orford, and you know, getting kind of support in that area. And I think that this is where the tea and tech model is a really useful one, because I mean, it takes kind of three things to do a tea and tech session: digital champion support, access to a box of kit that Communities Together East Anglia provide, and a space to do these sessions in. So just thinking about Orford in terms of what spaces are available, I mean, the town hall would be a perfect spot to do a tea and tech session, and it would be really kind of, what sort of support would you be looking for? Would you be looking for kind of face-to-face support sessions, one-to-one sessions? Would you be looking for a tea and tech session to perhaps start up there with that digital champion support from Communities Together East Anglia? So that's, from what we've been talking about, that's the sort of thing that we can offer.
Right.
I don't know if anybody else in the room is thinking along the kind of the lines of what they could perhaps offer.
I think what we would do, I'm obviously part of the social club as well. We have Wi-Fi there already. It's a nice space for people to go. It's right by the school, and so we could get some mums maybe prior to collecting their children come in there. And they're the sort of people I really want to try and get involved with. What I'm interested in really is accessing the equipment. I did send an email to somebody saying I was willing to be a digital champion, but I never heard anything back. I will chase that up today and make sure that I might have sent it to Dave Moore, who I think moved on and didn't pass it on to someone else. Anyway, I did try, I failed, but I would like to be a digital champion, and I'm happy to organise. I guess what I need is, if there is a structure that works elsewhere, I would like to know about it so that I can apply it to Orford. And then what I'll probably do is do a pilot scheme here, because I'm pretty sure there's a demand, but you know, I would just like to verify that. So it's a case of what help, I suppose my question is, what help is available for somebody who lives right out in the sticks? We have a library van, that's not going to cut it, but we do have somewhere, and I just want help and guidance into how best to set it up. And the digital champion training would be great if somebody could get me linked in with that.
Would you be able to pick that up, Tracy?
We can pick up outside of this meeting, Corinne. If you're happy for me to get in touch with you,
yeah, please.
Then I'll be very happy to.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Right, we now have our speaker from the Good Things Foundation, Hilary Nugent. I'd like to welcome Hilary. She's going to talk about the work of the foundation and then the National Data Bank. So over to you, Hilary.
Thanks very much. Let me see if I can do that first thing of sharing my slides, and then we'll take it from there. It's always a good start, isn't it? Can everybody see those slides? And I will just...
You probably need to put them on slideshow.
That's what we're trying to give it a go. Let's I'll try that again, 1 second. Okay. I'll try that again. And let's do that.
I think you're sharing your screen rather than sharing the slides, I think.
Yes, that usually, sorry everybody, that's usually not a problem, and for today it doesn't seem to want to work, so let's give it a go.
If necessary, I can share my screen.
Yeah, I know I shared them just in case, but I should be able to do this. So for whatever reason, I'm just trying to get access to the screen share. Let's try that.
We can see the slides. It's just that we can see the slides as well.
Yeah,
I know, and for some reason, I've got a sort of my sort of Google panel is just in the way, so I can't actually get that. Try that. Is that better? That should be better.
Oh, what's happening?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Hooray! Sorry about that, everybody. Technical problem as ever. So good morning, everybody. My name is Hilary Nugent and I am the volunteer manager at Good Things Foundation. And I work in the team that supports a very large network of community organisations that we work with. I'm really happy to be here. I would like to tell you more about our work, particularly I think for this group of people, some of the digital inclusion resources that we can provide to you as an organisation, some of the training that we have as an organisation. And obviously, I'm very happy to be able to come and talk to you about the National Data Bank, which is one of our newest and probably most ambitious projects, but something we're very proud of and very excited to share. So, just a little bit of background. I know as a group of individuals, some of you will know a lot about digital inclusion and some maybe a bit less and starting early on a journey. So I just wanted to give you some of the background about why we even exist as an organisation, I guess. And for us, there is a lot of reasons why people are not online. Sometimes it's because they don't have the skills or the confidence or even the inclination to do it. And that we tend to think maybe of an older generation that have never really accessed computers before, so don't feel that they're in the right place to do it now. But there's a lot of other reasons why people don't end up going online. And for us, more and more, I think it's a question of money. It's too expensive to have the data, or it's too expensive to get the equipment and to get the devices that they need. So our work kind of, because of that, is in three sort of main areas. We provide a lot of resources and training around digital inclusion for organisations. And more recently, we've started looking much more about data and how we can get data out to people. And the last strand of our work is something that we call the National Device Bank. And that's in its very early stages. But what we're doing is talking to a lot of our funding partners, people like BT and Lloyds, or any larger organisation really, that will gift us donations of their old devices. We are working quite hard with a national partner that is then sort of taking all those devices back to factory settings, resetting them, making sure they work properly. And then the plan is within the next 6 months or so to start to be able to distribute them out again to organisations that we work with. So although that's in early stages, we're kind of looking at all the resources and how to teach people about digital and digital skills, the price of it, and therefore how we can support that, and devices and how that can work too. So let's just move it on. So Good Things Foundation, who are we? We see ourselves as the UK's leading digital inclusion charity, and certainly through our work, over 3 million people have been supported since 2010. The way that we carry out our work is working with community organisations on the ground. So we provide the resources and the training, and they're the people that actually go out and deliver services. And that's the way we work. As well as providing those learning resources, we partner with government and the private sector to actually deliver digital inclusion programmes. And we're very much a campaigning organisation as well. So our campaign to fix the digital divide, our chief exec regularly speaks at sort of government conferences and gives evidence to parliamentary committees just to try and keep digital inclusion on the agenda. The organisations we work with are many and varied. We work with over 3,000 organisations at the moment. We call them internally the Online Centres Network, but they range from libraries, housing associations, GP surgeries, refugee centres, homeless centres, women's refuges, churches, anybody basically that is interested in doing digital inclusion work in their local communities. And we find that that's the best way for us to deliver any of our programs, is working with local organisations who know their own communities, they know what the needs are. And for us, it's a really good way of working and a really trusted partnership. Most of the organisations we work with, digital inclusion is probably only a very, very small part of what they do. And that's not an issue for us. As a refugee centre, you have some very urgent and pressing work to do. But as part of that, if you're supporting people and refugees to go online and access the services they need, that's what's crucial to us. So the Online Centres Network is free for anybody to join, and anybody who's looking for resources or looking for training or support in delivering digital inclusion, we would welcome to join us. The organisations that work with us see it as a big club, and that's the way, to an extent, it works. So there are Facebook groups, there are Slack groups, it's a way of interconnecting with other people that are doing digital inclusion work. It's free to join. There's a lot of networking opportunities, but also, as well as the sort of network opportunities, we do get opportunities to fund digital inclusion work. So we do get the chance to give grants out to organisations that are doing digital inclusion work. So I would encourage anybody that's here today to join the network if they think it would be useful to them. We run a lot of meetups. So, for example, we just linked to one of the speakers earlier, we run a meetup once every month or so of organisations that are trying to do digital inclusion work in rural settings, because the challenges of that could be very different to trying to work with BME groups or trying to work with refugees. So we try and get people together around the table that are having similar problems or work in a similar way. I couldn't not, any of you who do know Good Things Foundation, I couldn't come and talk to a group without talking about Learn My Way a little bit. Learn My Way is our own developed courses for people that are new to getting online. It's free courses. We say that some people can access it themselves if they have some skills, but it tends to be done in a group setting. And there are a lot of libraries that we work with that use Learn My Way as their main tool to teach people digital skills. It starts very early on in the journey. So there are things like just how to use a mouse and how to use a keyboard, things like using email or video and Facebook, online safety, but also things like how to search for jobs online or how to deal with health issues online and how to apply for universal credit. So we have quite a range of courses on there, but they are very much early stages. And we then do have other curated resources that people can move on to once they're feeling more confident. Just again, because I came in the end of the conversation there, on there is also how to be a digital champion training, and it's probably take you about an hour to go through that, and there are also resources to go through for that. So anybody who's an individual and is thinking about, I'd like to help other people, that's probably quite a nice place to start, because it gives you lots of ideas about what you could do. So National Data Bank, something that I get very excited about talking about at meetings, and I get told off at home because I tend to tell all my friends about it as well over a glass of wine, because I think it's a great project to be working on. But I think for us it's worth talking about where the data bank came from. And I think for any of us during the pandemic, we became more and more reliant on the digital world, and certainly the digital world to keep connected with people. But also during the pandemic, I think data poverty and the cost of accessing data became more and more apparent to a lot of people, and became more and more of an issue. So whether it was just a single mum who had 2 kids or 3 kids who were all trying to access Google Classroom or get on download videos, whatever it is, I think we became more and more aware that people weren't accessing the internet during the pandemic because they couldn't afford to, not because they didn't necessarily have the skills. And I think that's becoming more and more of an issue too, without getting too political. With the cost of living crisis as it is, people are already making the choices between food or energy. And if you add data into the mix, then that will always be the first thing to go. But if you don't have the internet, so many things and services become difficult to access, whether it's filling on online forms or booking a GP's appointment. You can't find the cheapest deal for energy, or you can't find the cheapest food if you can't go online and look. So data poverty can be a vicious circle as well. So what is the National Data Bank? So the way that it works is that telecoms companies have donated mobile data to the data bank, and we already have enough data to enable us to help, we hope, 500,000 people by the end of next year. At the moment, we're working with Virgin Media O2, 3 and Vodafone, but we are always working to try and get other people into the network. So we're always in conversations with other people, and we're almost hoping that the fact that 3 of the major providers have joined the network is become quite a push for us to get other providers to join in. We have the data. We can then distribute that data to anybody who's part of the online centres network that applies for that data. Sorry, the data then comes to you in the form of SIM cards or vouchers, and then you make choices within your community about who that data goes to. We've made the decision we can't distribute data to individuals ourselves because we couldn't carry out sort of any checks or keep control of that. But we work with so many community organisations on the ground who can. It just made sense that they're the ones that distribute the data. We've tried to keep it as open-ended as possible about who the data can go to. So we say over 18s for us is an issue because of all the potential safeguarding issues for us if people were distributing data to younger people, and that the person must be from a low-income household, and essentially, for whatever reason, with their low income, is struggling to access the internet, whether it's at home or when it's away with work. It's just, if data has become an issue for them and they can't afford it, this is a way of them getting access to it. The team that deal with this can tell this much more than I can, and I don't have lots of details, but essentially what happens is once you join the data bank, you can get a data vouchers and SIM cards. Unfortunately, all our providers work slightly differently because they want to keep some control of what they do, but we're working quite hard to make that easier and simple for any organisation to deal with. We would just deliver you the SIM cards, or you would have access to the data bank and the vouchers. And then you have access to that data as long as the data bank is live, which at the moment is to the end of next year, but we're hoping to extend that. And if you run out of data or SIMs, you just get back in contact with us, and we just add that to send you more data if you need it. And that's that's how it works. In terms of getting access to that data, we ask that you join the Online Centres network, because if we do that, then we can verify you as an organisation. Then it's just a case of sort of completing a very short application form, which is essentially about what does your organisation hope to achieve, and will you store that data safely, is basically what we ask you. It's an open application form, so there's not a short window for anybody to apply for data. It's as and when you're ready. And then every month we just look at all those application forms and tell people the outcomes by the end of the middle of the next month. We're working hard so that there isn't a lot of reporting back, because sometimes with the projects we've run before, our funders ask for a lot of reporting. And the idea is that this isn't reporting heavy at all. We need to know that how many people you've gifted data to on a month, and that's about all that we ask you to do. I've added on the slides, we have a monthly Q&A session every month, but obviously there's also, people can email me if they have further questions or if they want to know more about the data bank. And that's me. So I guess the best thing to do would be open it up to any questions about our work or what we do.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? We have a couple in the chat. Paul Rowlinson has asked if the SIMs are available to order now.
Yes, so the data bank is up and running now. I think at the last count we'd given out about 50,000 SIMs. So yes, we're up and running. So the issue for Paul will be, Paul, just to join the online centres network and then get applying. Yeah, we're up and ready to go. We're hoping to get a lot more different SIMs. So at the moment there are only the 3 providers, but it's a good start.
Right. Brilliant. Nick, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Fran, and thanks, Hilary. Really good overview there. Yeah, in terms of the data SIMs, you might have sort of semi just answered it. We're pulling together sort of a package of sort of things that we can offer people during the cost of living crisis, and as you can imagine, that's quite wide ranging. And we're gearing up for that. In terms of the SIMs, you know, just how many would be available to say Suffolk? You know, is there a certain batch that you could hand out potentially? I'm just trying to work out, is it in the hundreds or is it in the thousands? You know, if we came to you and said, look, we're going to probably need a lot because there are a lot of people out there that are going to be struggling. How does it work?
So we could do it. We work different ways with different local authorities. So, for example, I'm just talking to one of the northern local authorities at the moment about, I think they have about half a dozen contact centres, where the main points of contact for the council. And we're looking at setting each one of those up as a separate centre. And the reason for that is essentially then you have less problems about data and storage. Because if we set you up as a centre, we will send a batch of SIMs to one place and then you'll have to distribute them. So it may make more sense for you to go, okay, where are the places that are people likely to access, and set them up as individual centres. From our point of view, once we have done any due diligence work on you as an organisation, so if it's a charity, we, you know, check their charity number or whatever. So we do some basic due diligence work. After that, it's very much up to you to say how many SIMs you think you need, and that could be in the thousands. It's not a problem. It's just we get you to join the network, so we validate you, if you like, as an organisation, and then you can build up that relationship with the team. The other thing is you can ask for less, see how it goes, and then we got a really simple Google form saying, no, I've run out, I want some more. So once you kind of joined, you can keep adding on to that as you go.
Brilliant, thank you, that's helpful, thanks.
No problem.
Are there any other questions? Right, we can move on then to Kate Nolden from the Food Museum. She's going to talk to us about volunteers and digital. So over to you, Kate.
I think this is the one that I need to press play on because Kate can't be with us today.
Because the wonders of digital, Kate has recorded this because she's away.
Okay, give me a moment. Oh, I think I've just shared the wrong screen. Bear with me. Can you see the search for the stars screen? Is that what's sharing with you?
Yes, it is.
Excellent.
Hi, my name's Kate and I'm the curator of the Food Museum, previously the Museum of East Anglian Life. And I'm going to speak to you about our Search for the Stars project, which is our digitisation project. We've had fantastic success working with volunteers, digital volunteers, to tackle our digitisation backlog. and make our collections more accessible for everyone. It's also given us a wonderful opportunity to work with people from across the world, and because of that, we've got lots of new voices in our collections work. So in the following slides, I hope to show you how a small museum with quite little capacity has been able to work through our kind of backlog of cataloguing with digital volunteers. And this will hopefully give some of those of you who kind of want to do something similar some practical guidance to follow. I'm just going to start by playing a film which I put together last year, which hopefully explains the project in a little bit more detail, and also will give you a chance to hear from some of the volunteers who've worked on it. So Search for the Stars is our digitisation project here at the museum. We are taking all of our record cards and putting them on an online collections management system. So we're taking this information and putting it on a program called eHive. The reason for doing this is to get it all online so we know what we've got in our collection, so that the public can view the collection through the website, but also it's giving us an opportunity to go through every object one by one and highlight any star objects that we come across. So that can be anything that's interests people. And this is a big volunteer-powered project.
Hello, I'm Lizzie, and I've been a remote volunteer with the Museum of East Anglian Life since January. The main thing that I've been involved in is the Search for Stars project, helping to transfer the museum's old object record cards onto an online searchable catalogue. I've also been involved in doing further research into some of the museum's most interesting objects. I really enjoy volunteering with the museum. I'm in between study at the moment, and as I want to work in the museum sector myself, it gives me a great opportunity to further develop my skills.
I signed up for the Search for the Stars volunteer project when I was furloughed from my current role. I have always been in study, I've always been in work, I've never really had a period of unemployment, so I guess the prospect of suddenly finding out that I might not be working for a really long time was quite daunting. So I was trying to find something to do and came across the Search for the Stars research project with Museum of East Anglian Life and got in touch and started taking part in that over lockdown. It was a massive help for me in terms of giving me something to do every day, kind of meaning that I could maintain some sort of routine and mean that I was still challenging myself a little bit, as well as obviously things to do with, you know, finding out more about the museum's collections was really interesting.
Hi, I'm Eve and I'm a collections trainee here at the museum.
Hi, I'm Monet, I'm also a collections trainee here at the museum.
Today we're working on the Shooting Stars project and we have volunteers here working on site, and this project hopes to get all of our collection photographed so that this can be uploaded online as digital records so that we know what they look like, but also so the public can have better access to our collection.
We've had volunteers working on the project since its start, and they're a really important part of what we do and they help us to photograph everything that we have. So we've been working on our objects in the small object store and the large object store, and we're at a point now where we can recruit even more volunteers so we can photograph even more objects.
I just thought it might be useful to show you how eHive looks, because now Search for the Stars is kind of the data, and Shooting Stars, the photography project, is adding photographs. So you can see how these two things come together. On the left is how a volunteer would kind of look at eHive and edit records. And on the right is how it then pulls through onto our online catalogue, which means it's accessible for anyone who's using our website. So by using eHive, which is a cloud-based collections management system, it's meant that we've been able to work with lots of people from all across the world. So far, we've worked with 560 volunteers from over 25 different countries, including people based all across the UK, as well as more local as well. Over 75% of our volunteers are actually aged 20 to 34, which hugely differs from our usual volunteer demographic, which tends to be more retirement age. When we first went into the pandemic, we did move the entire project online. And since then, we have only worked with digital volunteers working remotely due to issues with kind of office space, but also because people tend to get on with the project quite well online because it is very flexible. It means that more people can do it, and it's, we don't have to rely on having space here at the museum for them to do so. They can kind of dip in and out of it a bit easier. So I thought I would, as I said, I wanted to make this as practical as possible. So I thought I'd kind of break it down into the kind of simple steps that I've taken in order to kind of streamline this process and how I've worked through, from recruitment all the way through. So initially, people email me and, ask to join the project. But it's really important that we don't just have email communications going back and forth, as I felt I can kind of really build rapport without actually speaking to people. Originally, people would come on site and would kind of hold little interviews, but now I do these all over the phone. So a volunteer will get a call from me or a video call if that's better, and we can speak to them about the project in more depth, find out about their motivations for volunteering and a bit more about their skills. At that point, I can then determine how much guidance they might need when it comes to training. And especially as it's a bit more difficult to support people working remotely, it's just good to kind of get an idea at that early stage what might be required. I've personally found online tools the easiest and most time efficient for both parties when it comes to registration. So I use SurveyMonkey for volunteer registration, but Google Forms is a really good cost-free alternative. Both of these allow you to download a report so you can keep track of volunteer data and not waste time kind of copying and pasting information over. So depending on your project, there are certain permission documents that you might want to ask digital volunteers to complete upon registration, such as data protection or secure storage of data. I send these as separate Word documents in an email, but I think there is probably a way to integrate that into an online survey just to kind of streamline it even more. Google Documents is super useful in terms of kind of collecting activity data. So in terms of training, I send over everything remotely, sending over Word documents and training manuals and things like that. I then give people feedback over email, but always offer a phone call if they do want to talk over the phone. And then I ask them to record their activity for the month. This used to be done sending over Word documents to me and me kind of like pulling that data off. And now I do it using a Google Docs online form. So people can actually put in their kind of hours that they spent volunteering and the records that they've gone through that month. So they kind of do that themselves now, which I think sometimes actually like leads people to kind of do a bit more work because they can see how other people are doing. I don't know if that is necessarily true, but I think you do have to be a bit careful though, because they will be able to edit other people's data. I haven't had any issues so far, but that is something to bear in mind, and maybe taking like regular backups and things like that would kind of sort out that problem. So the first step for me was to write a role profile, which you would do for any other volunteer post. But with this one, I wanted to make it really clear that the role is for remote volunteers only, and what the requirements are for it, so that you really do need to have a laptop or a computer, and you need access to the internet in order to do this role. The one I created explains the project and gives the kind of potential volunteer an idea of the skills they might want to learn and develop by doing it, as well as the kind of experience and skills the role requires. So think about what skills you want people to already have and how the role would benefit them, and therefore kind of who it might appeal to. For example, with our role, the online nature of it means it can be done at any time of the day, and it means it's possible for people to fit around their other commitments, such as working and studying or caring duties. So knowing kind of how that will come across to people is useful when knowing like where to actually recruit people from. This is some examples of where I find my volunteers. We've got usual kind of volunteer and job sites that I promote the role on, as well as kind of using our social media channels and different websites. I would say one of the big ones for us, because we kind of wanted to try and get a younger volunteer demographic differently to our other roles at the museum. So we specifically targeted universities and colleges locally, and that's been really effective. We also wanted to make sure we didn't forget our existing volunteers. So a lot of those we've trained up and they now work from home. And obviously this doesn't suit everyone, because some people volunteer for the social aspect of it, but quite a few people weren't really happy with that kind of way of working. There's also websites that I've used that have been quite useful. So the Nextdoor app, which is a bit like Facebook but more localized, is like a community notice board, I suppose. That's been good at getting local remote volunteers. And then also the Meetup app has also been useful. That is a bit more social. So, we did run online, sessions on site with groups of people who then some of them did become remote volunteers with us. But also it was just a good way to kind of get groups of people, particularly people who are kind of new to the area, who are looking to engage, socially. So although I can't give my online volunteers the same induction as those coming on site would receive, I make sure to still send them over our volunteer handbook, various policies and a staff chart so they knew who the museum team are. I also explain how the registration and training process works and tell them about the monthly newsletters that I'll be sending them, which give them updates on the museum, the project, and just to kind of make sure they feel in the loop and part of the team. When sending out work to volunteers, we scan or photograph our record cards and allocate a set amount to each volunteer using a Dropbox. This Dropbox, I definitely recommend using this tool, because you can choose to give only certain people permission and access, and it's really easy for people to access through a link. And it also doesn't mean people have to download kind of photographs to their own computers, so it helps with storage issues. The monthly emails that I write to all my volunteers gives them an update of the project, ask them for what they've done for the month, giving them stats on where we are as a project and more general museum updates. I think it is really important to consider how different the experience is for a volunteer not coming on site, and try and find ways to integrate them into the team. In the past, we've done things like creating videos of the museum with staff members, kind of thanking them for their work, running online workshops asking for feedback about our collection, and delivering our briefings online instead of in person. Some good examples from other museums are running regular online tea breaks, like over Zoom, or setting up something like a Facebook group, so volunteers can kind of chat amongst each other and share what they're doing. I personally haven't done that because whenever I put it out to volunteers, there hasn't really been that many people that have wanted it. But I would think with other projects that would probably be really useful. So because of our work with digital volunteers, we have achieved so much more than we thought we could, and it's been really brilliant. So as I've kind of already mentioned, we've worked with 560 people from over 25 different countries. This now means that 41,000 objects have been transferred and edited on eHive so far. And out of those objects, 20,000 of those are now public and they can be viewed through our website. So we're kind of halfway there in terms of what we have public. We've had 365 star objects that have been discovered in the collection, and those ones have gone on for people to also research. So some of our volunteers who've wanted to kind of engage a little bit more deeply with the collection have done that work. And because of all of this, our collections inquiries and loans to other museums have increased, particularly in the last kind of 6 months. So it's really great to see that actually people are finding what we have in our collection and it's not just hidden in stores anymore. Throughout the whole process, I've been collecting testimonials from volunteers, and I personally think this is not only useful to kind of show, you know, stakeholders the impact of the project, but for me, it's really good to see how people are actually finding the project as well. I've used these for many different things, so to help with recruitment and to share the project with other organisations, and also to put in a case study. So the case study on the left-hand side, we put together, I guess similar to this, like a practical kind of step-by-step guide to do something, how another organisation would do something similar. We shared this with lots of people, and we've had conversations with over 25 different organisations about the project who are kind of either looking to work with eHive or do something really similar with digital volunteers. And I'm more than happy to speak to anyone else about the project. Here is my email address here. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks to Kate, who couldn't be with us today, but has said that she would be more than happy to answer specific questions. So if you have some questions, would you please forward them to me at Community Action Suffolk, and I'll put my email address in the chat, and we can take it from there. We've now got a 10-minute break till 11:10, a comfort break. So we'll see you back at 11:10, where Simon Clifton, Chief Officer of Mid Suffolk CAB, will be taking us through an introduction for organisations starting on their data journey, as data is a big part of digital. So I'll see you all in 10 minutes. Thank you. Right, hello everybody. Back from a short break. We now have Simon Clifton, who is the Chief Officer for Mid Suffolk CAB, who will be setting out an introduction for organisations starting on their data handling journey. So over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Fran. Are you able to share the slides that I sent? Lovely.
I will do. And maybe a slight pause while I find it.
Good morning, everyone. So, as Fran's introduced me, I'm Simon Clifton, the Chief Officer at Citizens Advice here in Mid Suffolk, and been asked to talk to you today about data protection. I do apologise from the beginning; it's not going to be that thrilling, but I've had a brief, and I hope I'll stick to the brief. It's about the starting of data protection and what you need to consider when delivering virtual services. So the first thing to say really is that I'm not an expert in data protection. Fran asked me if I could come across and do a presentation for you, which I'm doing, but I am a practitioner of data protection within the workplace. And here at Citizens Advice in Mid Suffolk, I'm the Senior Information Risk Officer. So next slide, please.
Right. Can you see that?
That's it. Yeah, next slide after that.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing I want to make clear is, like I just said, that I'm not an expert in data protection, but being a practitioner in the workplace, we do have a fairly good understanding of what it means, what we do within our organisation. Now, Citizens Advice, by its very nature, has an awful lot of control and possession of personal and special category data for clients and our staff and volunteers. Now, confidentiality is absolutely paramount in how we operate, and complying with data protection legislation is key to achieving this. So I want to apologise just in advance. There are probably people on this call who have got a far greater understanding of data protection than me, but the brief was to produce it for people that might not have much of an understanding all the way through to delivering virtual advice. So hopefully that's where we're going to end up by the end of this, this short presentation. So personal data is information that relates to identifiable or someone relates to identified or identifiable individual. So what we're talking about here is, it's not just necessarily a name. Well, we lost the flip, but that's, it's not just necessarily a name. It can be anything that can identify an individual. So it will include their name, but need identification number, a location data, or an online identifier such as somebody's IP address, or cookie identifiers, which sometimes are picked up when you go online on things. Thank you, Fran. So. So the question to ask yourselves is, can you identify an individual from the information you have? The Information Commissioner's guidance states that if by looking solely at the information you're possessing, you can distinguish an individual from other individuals, that individual will be identified or identifiable. So you don't need to have someone's name for them to be directly identifiable, but a combination of other identifiers may be sufficient. And if an individual is directly identifiable from the information, this may constitute personal data. So I thought our best to try and explain this, and this example might help. So we are often asked to supply data on our clients to other parties. That includes the Suffolk Office of Data and Analysis, SODA. That provides a shared and high quality evidence base, enabling Suffolk public service organisations to improve the lives of Suffolk residents. Now, Citizens Advice across Suffolk has a data sharing agreement with SODA, and I'll explain a little bit more about those later. But in this example, we're asked to share client data down to postcode level. The names of the clients should not be shared, but what issues that they reported would be. Depending on where you live, there could be 30 houses with the same postcode, or maybe just a handful. We had to consider the potential of being able to identify an individual from a combination of other identifiers when considering that SODA request. And we concluded here that if we did provide that data down to postcode level, it was likely that other identifiers that SODA had access to would allow the identification of individuals. We therefore declined the request to share it, but did at postcode level, but did share data at a higher level, as the likelihood of identifying an individual using that combined with the other data they held is much reduced. So on the bottom of that slide, and Fran can share the slides at the end, I'm sure, there's just a link to the ICO's guidance on the same subjects I've just been through on what's personal data. Thank you, Fran. Thank you. So I do apologise again to the audience I've got. So I should imagine there's a lot of people present who are registered, but I was asked to cover who might be exempt from Information Commissioner Organisation Office registration. So the guidance states that organisations established for not-for-profit making purposes can be exempt from registration, and the registration can be appropriate for small clubs, voluntary organisations and some charities. Very clearly it says a not-for-profit organisation can make a profit for its own purposes, which are charitable or social, but the profit should not be used to enrich others. And any organisation which is not sure whether or not it's non-profit making should get appropriate advice from their accountant or legal advisor. And again, there is a link there that on the ICO website that explains the situation a lot better than I. So even though an organisation looking at that exemption list may be able to claim the exemption, you can decide to make a voluntary registration yourselves. So it's important to be aware that when an organisation relies on exemption from registration, they must still comply with the 7 data protection principles of good practice. They're still obliged to respond in 21 days to a written request to provide information that would have been included in the public register if they were registered, as if they were registered. So whether exempt or not, all organisations must comply with data protection guidance when processing or controlling personal data. And as I say, there's more information available to you on that using that link. Next slide, please. So in data protection terms, they talk about the 7 guiding principles. It used to be 8, it's now 7 because we left the EU and one of those was EU. So 7 guiding principles. Now, regardless of whether you believe yourself to be exempt from the registration with the Information Commissioner's Office, any organisation possessing personal data must follow these 7 guiding principles. The ICO guidance states these principles should lie at the heart of your approach to processing personal data. So to achieve this, every organisation will have a data protection structure in place, which I'm sure many of you already do. So apologies, and I'm going to keep saying apologies, but as I said earlier, my brief was to deliver a presentation that tried to capture all levels of data protection compliance across our sector. Next slide, please. So who's responsible for what? Well, in our organisation, we have an accounting officer, and that is a trustee who is responsibility for data protection. I'm the senior information risk officer, and then I have information and asset owners within the organisation who have responsibility for the assets, data assets that they control. So having established what we hold and where we have dedicated roles within our responsibility in our organisation for data protection, the day-to-day data protection tasks are delegated to me as Chief Officer, as the Senior Information Risk Officer. So below the Senior Information Risk Officer, the information asset owners are in practice responsible for their own email accounts, databases, spreadsheets, and in particular with us, notebooks, because they will hold personal data. As an organisation and as part of our membership and citizens advice, all our volunteers and staff must undertake annual data protection training. We all have a responsibility to ensure that we comply with data protection legislation, and all within our organisation understand that you are liable not only individually, but obviously for the organisation. Now, when GDPR came out, which was then brought into legislation to the Data Protection Act 2018, great play was put on the amount that the Information Commissioner's Office could fine an organisation. They currently sit at, non-compliance is set at a maximum fine of £17.5 million, or 4% of the annual global turnover, whichever is the greater amount. But that's important just to remember that, because some of the larger organisations are being fined close to those numbers. Next slide, please. So this is about data processing and data controlling, and there are some points there on this slide. So data mapping. To process and control data, every organisation will need to demonstrate what legal basis they're using to do so. Now, the legal bases are really quite varied, but the organisations need to make sure they understand what they are processing it under, and they will need to demonstrate why. There's a further distinction between personal data and special category data, and the legal basis there can differ. So it's really important the organisation have processes in place to distinguish between these two categories. In very general terms, when we process and control client, personal and special category data, it's most likely that we here would use a legal basis of consent. However, for staff contracts of employment, the legal basis would be contractual obligation. There are others, but data mapping would help you all to identify what legal basis you are processing personal and special category data under. So the next one down there is the information asset register. So once you've done your data mapping, you need to work out what you got from the data mapping and then record it on the register. So the organisation can both possess and control data, or do both, and we do that here. So on the list of our data on our register, we currently got, ours is run through an Excel spreadsheet, through a template supplied to us by the National Citizens Advice Organisation. And I can say for Citizens Advice in Mid Suffolk, we're at just over 100 lines of information, individual data sources recorded and being in our register that we need to keep an eye on under ICO guidance. Also on that register, you need to identify the legal basis you're possessing it under and controlling it under, and also how long you intend to retain that data for. So data privacy impact assessments. So this is when the most commonly used when you do a new project, and it's a process that you do to identify and minimise data protection risk of that project. So you must do a data privacy impact assessment for possessing data that is likely to result in a high risk to individuals. This includes some specified types of processing. You can use the ICO screening checklist to help you decide when to do a DPIA. It is also good practice as a DPIA for any other major project that requires the processing of personal data. And the sort of things that must include are the nature, scope and context of the purposes of the processing, the access, necessity, proportionality and compliance measures, identifying and assessing risk to individuals, and identifying any additional measures to mitigate those risks. So data sharing agreements. Now this is something that in Citizens Advice, we commonly do have some issues in gaining data sharing agreements with our partners. Some better than others, but it's just, I think, sometimes down to a lack of understanding of what we're trying to achieve. So it is what it says on the tin. A data sharing agreement is an agreement between two parties or more for sending and receiving data. And although it says it's not mandatory, we would always, in our world, try and make it best practice to get a data sharing agreement where we're sharing data on a regular basis. So whatever terminology we use for data sharing, getting an agreement is obviously the best option for you if you're sharing data between different parties on a regular basis. So data processing agreements, this is where someone processes personal data on behalf of a controller. So examples of where we have that happening for us are, we have data processing agreements in place for our telecommunications supplier, our IT supplier, our payroll contractors, and our off-site document storage facility. Next slide, please. Thank you. So having the right data protection policies in place as part of organisational governance will ensure that your team understand their responsibilities and can demonstrate compliance with legislation. So we are fortunate at Citizens Advice that we're members of a national organisation, and we have access to a number of data protection resources that include template policies and procedures. I appreciate that not everyone on this call will have access to those, but that's just something that we do have access to. So the list on this slide is not exhaustive, and we do have other policies that link into data protection, such as our home working, social media use policies. But this is what I would be suggesting that organisations should be considering as an absolute minimum for data protection within their own organisation. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're into the part that, in fairness, is something that does sometimes cause us the greatest issues. Apologies. So subject access requests and individual rights. So under the General Data Protection Regulations 2018, this was one of the major changes that happened in data protection. And this was the right for individuals to make requests to access the data that you hold on them. So as it says here, individuals have the right to access and receive a copy of their personal data, and that's known as a subject access request. So that can be made to you in any form, verbally, writing, social media. It's very clear in any form. And in certain circumstances, third parties can make a subject access request on behalf of another person. That sometimes happens to us here when somebody's gained legal advice. So there's some really important things to do around subject access requests, and this is why you need to get your governance in place. So you must respond without delay and within 1 month of the receipt of the request. Now you can extend that to 2 months if it's complex or it's a number of requests by an individual. You should perform a reasonable search for the requested information. You should provide the information in an accessible, concise and intelligible format. The information must be disclosed securely, and you can only refuse, if you're going to refuse to provide the information if an exemption or restriction applies, or if the request is manifestly unfounded or excessive. So in practical terms, what we have found here in Mid Suffolk when we've received these type of requests, generally we get a blanket request for all information. We don't get one that asks for a particular piece of data that we hold for a particular reason. And then sometimes it's followed up by the next request, which is a data erasure request. So it's something I just thought I'd bring up with you, because it is likely that somebody could make that request to you. It's really important that you have a plan in place to be able to respond to these requests, because they are time sensitive, and always best to respond in the same way for each request using a template where possible. Again, there's a lot of detail, more detail on this on the ICO website. So we're having a bit of death by PowerPoint here already, so I don't really want to go into that too much more at the moment, but happy to take questions at the end if that was useful. Next slide, please. Okay, so a real jump now to virtual advice. So in our world, what was our need? What did we do? What did we learn? Where are we now? So we all know what happened in March 2020, and I doubt there are many here today who do not have to rapidly rethink how their business operated in the COVID world. So Citizens Advice has always been an organisation that prides itself on an ease of accessibility. And for us in Mid Suffolk pre-pandemic, approximately 45% of our clients were seen face-to-face. However, even before March 2020, we were looking at how we could expand our reach to help more in need, particularly in our rural communities. COVID just accelerated the process for us. The removal of face-to-face was a huge issue for us, and there are many people who do need that level of service and struggle accessing our services by the other channels. However, in addition to our traditional client demographic, COVID brought new service users to us, who had more digital skills and who were looking for help through digital channels. Now, nationally, Citizens Advice ensured that the Advice Line website was regularly updated with guidance and legislation, as this was changing daily in some cases. Locally, we updated our website with alternative means of contact and increased our resources on email and telephone advice. But there was still a significant number of clients who really needed to speak to us in person, but could not access us due to restrictions in place for face-to-face meetings. So what did we do? So we put our hands up. If we're being honest, we were a bit behind the curve on the use of virtual digital media at the start of the pandemic. It was something that we've been considering as an organisation for quite a while, but we had more than enough clients contacting us by our other channels, and it was an aspiration rather than actively seeking a means to deliver virtual advice at that time. So COVID hit, and we had to do something to try and get virtual advice up and running. We did achieve it in the first 3 months of the pandemic. Did we achieve it in the first 3 months of the pandemic? No is the answer to that. We, like many of us on this call, had a lot of other things going on, and we had to work through. But we continued to know that we had to move forward on virtual advice after the initial COVID hit. So, as I said, accessibility is huge for us, and people were just not able to access us using the telephone as well. And so for face-to-face, it was fairly obvious through all the restrictions, all the lockdowns, that virtual media was probably going to be, in the short term, probably only a real option. So as I said, we're members of Citizens Advice National Service, but in this particular case, they were also behind the curve, and the guidance that was available to us about delivering virtual advice was more centred on existing virtual media platforms like Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts. At the start of the pandemic, to us anyway, Zoom was virtually unheard of, but now, as we all know, how things change. We found we needed to cater for users who only had access to a mobile device, so a telephone. So for them, they wanted to be able to contact us by WhatsApp, or for Apple users, FaceTime. So what we did, we treated it as a new project. Capacity to deliver the virtual advice was always an important consideration, and we decided that the virtual advice should be by appointment only, having first contacted us by another means such as the telephone or by email. As it was a new project, which we processed in personal data by a new means, we completed a data privacy impact assessment. And as I previously explained, that allowed us to assess the data protection risks and to put mitigation in place. So some of the things that we put in our DPIA for this were the potential for virtual advice to be recorded by the client. Now, we covered this through a detailed briefing to the client, and the agreement no recording would be made. This did not remove the risk, but mitigated to the extent that we were comfortable that should it be ignored by the client, the recording was personal data of the client primarily, although it would also be of the advisor. The client was told to ensure they were in a secure location and could not be overheard by members of the public. Only IT equipment supplied by our organisation will be used by our advisors. The contact number or email address of the client was deleted from our device immediately following the appointment. We found that parental control was needed to enable on devices to ensure no improper usage. Virtual advice was only delivered from our advice centre using secure internet connection. Nothing was done remotely from homes. And most importantly, other means of contact was maintained for those that couldn't use virtual media. So what did we learn? I think the biggest thing we learned was that we cannot plan for everything, and delivery of advice by virtual channel comes with challenges that are not always within your control. So those challenges included, we faced issues of a lack of digital skills by clients and on some occasions advisors when trying to make the connection for the appointment. A significant number of clients only possessed a mobile phone and another digital device. Many were pay-as-you-go, and they had limited data and no access to Wi-Fi connection. Very few clients had access to a printer that was needed for printing out forms, etc. Using Microsoft Teams on mobile devices was problematic. clients were not able to upload documents and they couldn't attend the advice centre with them because of the restrictions in place. Many of the appointments could have been conducted as efficiently as on the telephone, and that was important to us. That did allow us to manage demand, because we could do an awful lot of what was being done virtually on the telephone. So delivery using virtual advice via an individual's client's own device is now extremely infrequent for us in our current business, as initial contact by telephone can be followed up by an appointment in person at our premises. But it's still an option for those that cannot attend any of our advice locations. So where are we now? Well, delivery of advice by virtual channels is something that we're very keen to develop further. During the pandemic, we received some additional funding from the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy to develop innovative advice solutions. This enabled us to employ a project worker who developed alternative advice delivery models and channels as part of a wider network of similar projects across the country. Experiences and knowledge were shared, and there were plenty of examples of what was tested and didn't work, along with the initiatives that did. The innovation project allowed us to establish 2 outreach advice services that are delivered by virtual channels. So we currently have a virtual advice session available from Wattisham Flying Station and Needham Market Library. So we work with partner organisations based at those locations to deliver advice through booked appointment slots using equipment supplied by us. Clients and partners do not use their own devices. We leave the devices at those locations. We have data sharing agreements in place with those partners, as the booking of the appointment means that they will be processing and sharing personal data with us. The client, where necessary, is supported to access the service and to use devices by our partners' staff or volunteers. We have evaluated what devices are suitable and identified software that allows the scanning of documents by the client. We have shared our learnings with the County Digital Inclusion Network and have delivered training to partner organisation Digital Champions. So we are really, really keen to expand the use of virtual advice, and we are currently working at Mid Suffolk with Baver and Mid Suffolk District Council to develop joint facilities and a shared booking calendar. We would like to see a point in the future where there are public access devices in many locations as possible that partner organisations can use, enabling them to hold virtual appointments with their clients or customers, improving access to their services. What I'd really like to stress at this point is that the Citizens Advice Mid Suffolk recognise that virtual appointments are an important contact channel, but we also understand just how important it is to maintain the more traditional methods of contact, such as telephone, email, and in particular, really important to us, a face-to-face service in person. So, next slide, please.
Right.
So that concludes what I'm afraid was probably quite a torturous presentation for you all, and hopefully we might have some time for some questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Simon? Could you, you touched in your presentation, Simon, on some of the issues you had with clients. How effectively has your innovation project overcome those? Particularly things like you particularly cited scanning of documents and that sort of thing.
Obviously during the COVID period, it was extremely challenging for everybody, and we had a lot of plans in place that so we were going to be in one location and then that location closed, and I would say that the decisions on what device to use, so we've plunked for an Android device. So we use Android devices rather than Apple devices. There are some reasons for that. One of them is cost. We'll be quite open and say that Android devices are generally cheaper, but also some of the software work better on the Android devices when we're scanning. So the scanning of documents is very, very useful because there's very few people now that have a working printer at home, unless you are working from home and has been provided to you. And so, and whether we want to try and be paperless or not, unfortunately, there's still an awful lot of things that aren't paperless. So a lot of our partner organisations will insist on a letter of authority to act. You know, now we looked at DocuSign in the process, but for the same sort of reasons that we had with people accessing Microsoft Teams from devices, it was felt that DocuSign was just a stage too far. So what we have at our locations now is the ability for the device to be held over the top of the paperwork, and one button press. That document is then scanned and immediately emailed to a dedicated email address and then deleted from the device. So we're not storing anything on those devices, which is really, really important to us. There are loads of challenges to do with virtual advice, but going forward for us, you know, and I know that there are some people here on this call who've been working on it as long as we have across the county. If we get to a situation where we've got as many public access devices as possible, with people that can help people access somebody on the other end of that device through an appointment, and that's a shared booking, then it'd be a far more efficient system for everybody concerned, and we will be able to reach an awful lot more people.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got questions from Nick and from Miles at ArtLink. I'm not sure who's first. Nick, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Fran. Thanks, Simon. Good work on the data protection coverage. Never an easy gig. I've been there before. Yeah, no, just a question really about, you know, you're in a good position as one of the sort of front doors, as we call it, you know, citizens advice, meeting all these people, you know, in person and on the phone. Do you feel, Simon, there's an opportunity there to perhaps refer people into the system to help them, you know, become digitally included, get some training, go to one of the sessions, a tea and talk or something else? Do you feel that would be welcomed by some of the people that come through your doors?
Oh, undoubtedly, Nick. You know, that definitely would be of use. I think that the SIP system can be used for that. You know, as long as it's clearly identifiable within the Suffolk Information Partnership who can provide that. And I realise futures do, but it's where that can be provided, because if it's not at the locality where the client stroke customer is, then it's obviously the opportunity is diminished greatly, because you can't really deliver digital training initially, certainly digitally, through virtual means. But no, I think that when citizens advice, from our point of view, I know that one of my colleagues on the call as well, I know she'll agree, but we fully understand that virtual advice is a channel that is a useful channel, right? It's a useful channel, but there will always be people that can't do virtual advice, and that's the bit we have to be really careful of, because I think what was very clear to us was that I'm not sharing anything that's confidential, but during the process, the COVID process, we had this is an example. We had a situation where we were interviewing potential volunteers virtually, and we were using Teams, and someone inadvertently shared a screen with a potential volunteer that shouldn't have been shared, and that was a lack of training and understanding of using that system. Now, we reported that as a breach, and you know, we dealt with it. It didn't need to go very far, but we reported that as a breach and dealt with it. But what it showed to us was that I think that here we made a lot of assumptions that people, even our own advisors and staff, could use that technology. Now, I know that certainly some of the statutory authorities are much further along in using, you know, virtual media for meetings amongst themselves than we were, but you know, I think we just have to be cautious. I think it's a really useful thing to do, but there will always be people that can't join us.
Thanks.
Okay, Miles from Suffolk ArtLink, you have a question.
Yeah, it's kind of about barriers people might face and about data protection of accuracy and stuff, and whether there's kind of conversations and guidance around kind of what needs to be asked, and kind of how to be more inclusive? Because to be honest, as a non-binary person, I don't see accuracy actually being involved in services of all different scales. And I know that when people, if places ask for title and don't include MOOCs or ask for gender, and I've seen with NHS, it's on the mental health thing, not include genders that would be appropriate. Is there any movement or guidance of how best to do best standard on it?
Miles, I haven't seen anything recently come out from the ICO around that non-binary. Within Citizens of Ice, we use a CRM system, a casebook system to record all clients. Okay, and we do have the option. So we do have non-binary option, but I know that isn't the case across every organisation. But I think there's, to my knowledge, I said to be I'm a practitioner, not an expert. To my knowledge, there isn't anything in the ICO guidance that says that how people should be recorded. To my knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
Right, well, we now have a session on digital skills. We're looking at the development of digital skills in Suffolk, and we have Nicola Jenner from the Suffolk County Council Skills team. Over to you, Nicola.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen. So Fran, if you can just let me know, hopefully it'll pop up and it'll all be fine. If you can just let me know that everybody can see it, that would be great.
Yeah, we can, probably needs to be on slideshow if that's possible.
Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
Brilliant.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So hi everyone, it's interesting for me because digital skills has been mentioned in pretty much everybody's section so far, and I was a bit worried that we weren't going to be able to contribute very much, but I'm hoping that we will be able to contribute quite a lot. So I'm going to do two-part presentation really, although all of the information is included on the slides. I am going to have to just resend them over to Fran and Liz because I've made a couple of changes with the contacts at the end. There is a lot of information on some of the latter slides about some of the support that we offer. So if you do have any questions, then please do come back to me by email. But yeah, I wanted to do two parts really because as a skills team in Suffolk County Council, we really aim to provide opportunities for our residents, both in terms of employment, but also in terms of opportunity to training. And we do that as a pathway, really. So there are different parts of the skills team. And given the situation with the pandemic and all of the issues that we've seen arise from that, I mean, I know that I've certainly become much more skilled digitally than I was before the pandemic, but I think it's become even more difficult for people who are not confident to access some of the services, and most services now are available online. So we want to ensure that we're providing those skills, and within the skills team it is a key priority for us to work around digital, and it flows through all of the different parts of the skills team. But I'm also going to cover some specific funding opportunities that will either potentially suit your volunteers, your staff, or your residents. So again, if you've got any questions about any of those opportunities towards the end, then please do let me know. So I guess just starting really with the role of the skills team, as I said, we are, one of our key aims is to enable inclusive growth. And what we mean by that is to offer opportunities for everyone and to make sure that those opportunities are promoted and to make sure that they are available to every group of people in Suffolk. It was something that both Hilary and Chris mentioned, that I think it was the second most important reason for not accessing the internet is lack of digital skills. So it's really, really important that we embed digital skills in all of our pathways to learning, and that we make sure that people have opportunities at every stage in their life to access the opportunities, but also to access the resources. So one of my key parts of my role is that I review and refresh our digital skills programme as part of the skills team, and embed all of the work across all of our different departments into the digital skills programme to try to ensure that people are accessing the opportunities. Now, the digital skills programme does have 4 strands, so it's not just about digital inclusion, but obviously digital inclusion underpins all digital access. If people can't access the opportunities because they don't have basic digital skills, or they don't have access to resources, then we can't take them on that path through the rest of the digital pathway. So we do work very closely with schools. Digital in education is a priority for us. We try to promote digital opportunities in schools, and we try to inspire young people to follow a digital pathway. That's not to say that we expect everyone to move into digital employment, but it is really obvious now that most jobs will have some digital element to them. And so making sure that people have got competency and are confident in digital skills from school age, from primary school age right the way up, is really important to us. We work with industry groups and with employer representative bodies to make sure that we feed in some of the gaps in the system back into policy. And we're very aware that on a different level of digital inclusion and exclusion, that there are some groups that don't access the opportunities at a higher level. The digital industry, for example, is still around about 70% of jobs are taken by men. So it's something that kind of digital inclusion for me doesn't just cover the basic level, it moves right the way through to the top end level. And obviously making sure that organisations like you guys in the VCSE sector have the skills to promote your services as much as for people to access them. So we work with the local enterprise partnership. We aim to work with VCSE groups, and obviously I've worked with Fran on on some excuse me some projects up till now, but we do really want to promote all of the offer for all of our residents to ensure that they can take advantage of the opportunities available, and that includes not just in the digital industry, that includes across all industries. So just to give you an idea of the breadth of the team that I work within, I actually am a policy officer, so I work within the Skills for Growth section of the skills team. We refer to the skills team as developing Suffolk talent, because obviously that's what we want to do, is to make sure that our residents are as productive and as happy in their roles as they move through life as possible. And so the Skills for Growth team, our key focus really is to keep an eye on what's happening in the labour market, to keep an eye on what's happening broadly in the economy, and to keep an eye on what central government are saying, to try to pick up the best offer for Suffolk, which may all sound very high level, but actually one of the key changes with the local government funding that's coming through, we're going to be accessing around £8 million worth of funding over the next 3 years as part of the Multiply project for our adult education budget. And we need to make sure that we can make the most of that and offer that funding as opportunities for people who maybe haven't picked up the opportunities while they've been at school and maybe want to develop their employability as they get older. So although, as I said, it does sound quite high level, you know, there's a lot of stuff that comes through to us from central government. There are lots of funding opportunities, some of which I'll talk about later, and it can be very confusing. It can be really confusing for some of the large employers that we work with who, you know, operate within digital. We work very closely with BT, but I think it's even more confusing for residents and for smaller companies and for social enterprises who may have needs but don't necessarily know if they can be fulfilled at a reasonable price with all of the resources that they need. So we do need to communicate our offer as much as possible, and obviously that's hopefully part of what I'm trying to do today. Just moving down through the work of the team though, we do have a focus on getting people into work, on equipping adults and young people with the skills and knowledge and opportunities that they need to progress into productive work. We have a focus specifically on vulnerable people, people who maybe haven't achieved the qualifications that they need for work in school. And I'll talk about the offer of our adult learning service in a second. We also have a progression team who work with people who may move from school into, not into employment, education or training that we term NEETs. To try to support them to gain skills. And we work with VCSE groups like Lapwing and their Minding the Gap programme to ensure that people can access those skills and can re-engage with the education system. So a lot of our work is with training providers to ensure that people at every stage of their life can access opportunities. With work inspiration, as I said, really what we're trying to do there, and a key part of my job, is to take the opportunities into schools and say, this is not something that just a small group of people can access. This is something that anybody can access, and just try to promote the fact that people can see themselves in successful careers into the future, and that they may want to change career at some point and take advantage of some of the opportunities available that are coming through from funding from central government. So I guess one of the opportunities that may be useful for you guys, and it may be useful for some of your volunteers, but potentially more for some of our residents, is that we fund through skills budgets and obviously through the Multiply project that I mentioned already coming from central government, the adult learning service, which offers learning for people age 18 and 19 plus. A lot of these projects come in at age 19 plus, but we offer a really broad, fully funded digital offer. So I won't read through all of these, but there are the examples of the adult learning service are mentioned on that slide for you to have a little look at later and see if there's anything that you may want to access. But we offer from a foundation or entry level, so computer skills for beginners, really, you know, accessing a laptop, accessing some of the programs that you can look at on a laptop, just really kind of basic level, turning it on. How do you send an email? How do you access social media? What do you need to be able to do that? What can you get out of your laptop? Obviously with these, they are run through providers, and Jamie is going to come in. He works for Realise Futures, and they're our main provider of digital training through the adult learning service. So they have a really good knowledge of our local ecosystem and what our residents need and where that can all fit. And I think a lot of the offer that I've got on that screen probably does come from Jamie. So I'm hoping that I haven't stolen any of your thunder, Jamie, or covered anything. But hopefully really from that you can see that there is an incredibly broad offer, starting at, you know, computer for beginners, computer skills for beginners, really basic, through creative digital to inspire people to use digital in different ways, right through to level 2, which is a GCSE level, certificates and diplomas. And obviously when people take part in our adult learning service, they can be referred on to further training if they find that it's been helpful to them. And also, just to make it clear, because we're talking about digital inclusion, that we are resourced. So anybody who accesses the adult learning service can access a laptop or a tablet or resources to help them access all of those courses and work within those courses. So yeah, hopefully that will give you some idea of some of the courses that are available. Broadening the support. Within our team, we also offer other support through our Work Well Suffolk team, and some of you will have come across our Work Well Suffolk team. Our Work Well Suffolk team supports people who are furthest from the labour market. So again, there is a focus on employment really for us, but obviously getting people into the labour market that have been unemployed for a year or more, who may have mental health difficulties, who may have health difficulties, is something that can only be good for digital inclusion. And we support those furthest from the labour market with our Work Well Suffolk coaches, and also in conjunction again with Realise Futures, Menta and Steadfast, to offer non-accredited digital skills programmes. And again, people who access those skills can then move on into referred training, ongoing training if they want to. The Work Well Suffolk team were given some funding via the European Social Fund from the Local Enterprise Partnership to buy 30 laptops to support their service. And I'm aware that those 30 laptops have been used more than once and have gone out so far, and this is just in the post-COVID time, to around 73 participants to help enable them gain basic literacy, numeracy and digital skills to take them on to gain higher quality learning opportunities. So while I'm talking about opportunities for residents, and I am conscious there's a lot in here, so I will go through this next little bit quite quickly, and if you've got any questions, please do come back to me. There are higher level offers. So I've talked about the Adult Learning Service and the Work Well Suffolk team who engage with some of our more vulnerable residents. But for everyone over the age of 19, the government invested around £2.5 billion partway into the pandemic to upskill residents of age 19 plus to A-level standards. Really, these are level 3 qualifications, which is I guess in old money an A-level standard qualification. And there are lots of free opportunities which may be useful for your staff or for your volunteers, or to promote to some of your clients through either the Skills Bootcamp programme or through free level 3 qualifications through local FE and HE providers. So the Skills Bootcamp programme, we are going to be working with the Local Enterprise Partnership to promote a very local offer on this, which will include digital, but there currently are Skills Bootcamps available. Now, these are part or fully funded courses at a level 3, which include digital marketing and software development, I guess would be the ones that would be of most interest, but there is an offer on data analysis, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and these are courses up to a maximum of 16 weeks. They are offered really flexibly, part-time, full-time, lunchtime courses. We've got providers who are working with individuals to make sure that they can fit the course in around other work commitments. And if you are an SME or a social enterprise and you want to send some of your staff on this training course, then they are 90% funded. So we're looking at roughly around about £400 for a fully accredited course in software development, digital marketing, etc. We're also going to be offering those across construction and technical and green skills, which may not be of such interest to you guys, but the digital offer is going to be quite comprehensive, and I can give you more information around that, or you can have a look on the gov.uk website, and the link is included in the presentation. The free level 3 qualifications again tend to be around software development, and they will be offered through local colleges or online through national colleges. And again, there's a link for that if you have any of your staff or volunteers or residents who may want to upskill with a qualification at the end of it. Within our team, we've also developed some training and funding opportunities, and currently it's just been launched is our Pathways Training Fund. So again, this might be something that you guys might be interested in as employers to offer to your staff. I'm talking about this because there is a digital offer as part of the Spark, but you'll see from the slides that there is also leadership and management training opportunities, health and wellbeing, customer services opportunities. This is a European social funded project which will come to an end in 2023 and which funds 75% of the cost of training for social enterprises and SMEs across Norfolk and Suffolk around any of those key areas. So if you're aware that your staff would like to pick up some training within one of those areas or topics, then if you get in touch with the Spark team, and again, the contact information is there, they can help you look at some funding opportunities for those. Finally, in terms of funding opportunities, we have a much higher level opportunity in conjunction with the University of Suffolk, and they've got a part funded opportunity at level 5 and above. So we're looking at kind of first year degree level really with that for any of your leaders which may well want to access leadership training or high-end digital training. So that offer is really more in terms of inclusiveness about targeting women at the higher end of the career spectrum, but it may be something that, you know, for your managers or workforce you may want to look at, and the contact for that is part of the university and is available on the slide. Our adult learning service, just so that you're aware, does take tenders from lots of different companies. So our adult learning service has got projects which support people who need English as a second language training, might want to be supported into work, who have sensory and health disabilities, who have mental health disabilities, and we work with lots of partners to provide those services. But if you feel that you might want to look into offering digital training via our adult learning service, all of the information that you might need is on slide number 10. Slide number 11 is just a little bit about our external funding team. I went to them just to say that I was speaking to the VCSE sector, and they've offered to advise you if you need any support around funding applications, project development, bid writing, that kind of thing. So there is a little bit of information on there too. And I will get all of that information with contacts over to Fran for you. I do apologise if I've overrun slightly. There was a lot of information in there, so I hope I haven't overwhelmed any of you. But yeah, that's it from me.
That's great. Thank you, Nicola. Very comprehensive and really useful. Our next speaker is Jamie Mortimer from Realise Futures. Realise Futures are a VCSE organisation and they are a training provider. So over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Fran. And thank you, Nicola, for lining me up so nicely to follow on from that. So I'm the Digital and Work Skills Manager at Realise Futures. We deliver the adult learning contract in Suffolk. And that's to about the value of about 2.8 million a year that is to be spent in Suffolk. And what I would add on that is that that a lot of the offer that is on Nicola's slides earlier is our accredited offer, and that accounts for about half of that allocation. The other half is probably where I would be sort of talking to you guys today and where we can help, because as part of that unaccredited offer, it's purely for engagement and getting people into learning. As Nicola had also said, you know, our main aim is to support those furthest from the job market, but it is really about vulnerable adults, and that absolutely covers digital exclusion. I think I'd also want to echo Simon's comments earlier, where we've been delivering courses throughout the pandemic, that just because a household is connected to the internet does not mean they have access to the internet and to the and to the world and the digital platforms, because what we would experience is that they might have one laptop in that house. They might have, you know, and actually, you know, well, as parents and families, you put yourself in that situation, and your child and their schoolwork comes first. So when do you get access to that technology to get online? So I think actually there's you know, listening to the various speakers today, there's certainly something around, I don't know how we get to the bottom of what that real number is or that real figure is around digital exclusion, but yeah, physical access to use the equipment and the technology is a really key part. So yeah, I think the way that Realise Futures and using the adult learning contract, where we can help the voluntary and community sector, is you may well have, and I know I'm going to get this wrong, whether you call them residents, clients, service users. I know we all use different phrases, but our communities, the people we serve, yes, we have our public offer and they can be signposted into that. But where organisations are got very specific projects in mind and you are trying to engage with very specific communities, and especially around the digital inclusion, but certainly not limited to, we as an organisation can work with you very much in a co-production scenario where we can understand what that need is, and we can put together a course, a workshop, an intervention, whatever that might look like. It could even be that we're in the beginnings of having that conversation with your service users, you know, to understand what their needs are. But I think one of the big advantages that we've had over the last 2 years is for a little while, we had a very small window where we were allowed to spend our funding allocation on equipment, which we've never had before in the whole of the time that I've been in adult learning. We were actually able to spend some of that allocated budget on equipment. And we have approximately about 140 laptops right now, a number of Wi-Fi devices to enable people to get on, although that's not typically what the requests are when supporting learners. But yeah, we have a lot of equipment and we can come and bring that. We can loan it to learners for the period of their study. Now that doesn't have to be that they don't have access to any IT. Again, where we were doing courses where you know, they've got families in the home and they don't have enough kit, we're able to loan them a laptop, even if they have other devices, even if they have the internet, so that they can actually do their study when they need it, and not have to wait and do it at like 10 o'clock at night. So yeah, we have that kit. Equally, you heard earlier with, and I'm going to try and get their new right name correct, Communities Together East Anglia. You know, we've worked with them where they're identifying and they're engaging with their community, and we've then put on courses where we actually gift tablets to the learners, because actually I think it's really important that if you're going to take someone down that journey of training them up on how to use a specific piece of technology, they need to be able to take that away and use it at home, and you've got to empower them to be able to hook up to Wi-Fi in, you know, that local coffee shop or the library, or that, you know, you want them to be able to use it in a really real way. So we've delivered some of those, and we've very much worked with Tracy on developing what the content of that was, and I think one of the things I would say today is we are always looking for organisations to work with and partner up with, really like to be able to co-produce these courses, because I think it'd be too easy for me to just look at what our offer is and pull it in and say, yeah, we'll run one of those, but actually that only fits the need of half of the people that you're putting forward, and you've got the other half that really needed something maybe more gentle or a slower introduction, or or just more time sometimes to be able to practice and use it. We also run something that I think would maybe really suit your volunteers and the people that you work with. We've developed a very short 10-hour accredited level 1 course on being able to work using virtual meetings, and we run that through Microsoft Teams. I know that was mentioned earlier as a bit of a barrier, and probably like a lot of organizations, when COVID first hit us, we used whatever the learners wanted us to use. We were using Zoom and Teams and Skype and even some people, the big blue button, or all these other things that you can use for video conferencing. And that was great, and we had to respond. And then whilst all that was going on, we had to get our Cyber Essentials Plus standard kite mark, which really kind of said, you can't just use anything. You've got to make sure that everything's GDPR compliant and so on. So you have to pick a solution, and then you have to stick with it and work with it. So yeah, we've developed that, and that's something that we've sort of developed where we've been working with Felixstowe Job Centre, where they're saying, actually, we've got lots of, well, not actually, they haven't got lots of people on the books, but where they have got people on the books, they're not skilled, or they don't have the skills yet to be able to apply for a lot of those remote working jobs, and they are coming through, and that is something that people need to be thinking about. So that's something that we've developed, and that's something that we also acknowledge that we've actually put some of our staff through that to help build their confidence, because if you'd have told us 2 years ago we were going to deliver online, our tutor workforce would have thrown their arms up in the air and said, no, we don't want to do that. But then of course we just had to. So there is, we've got a lot of experience with that, and I think what we need is we need other organisations to come forward that we can work with. And I can't ever stress this enough, is that this money is earmarked for Suffolk, and if we aren't able to earn its full contract value, then that's money that didn't get spent in Suffolk. And I know that just listening today, that there's lots of projects going on where you're developing your digital champions or your digital volunteers, or you're developing a digital service, it might be that you've only got 1 or 2 that you want to put through a piece of learning, but we could work with 2 or 3 organizations and actually make that happen as a course, where they would all be coming together and learning the skills with other people that need to use them in a similar way. What I would also add is that we have 6 key centres around Suffolk, but that isn't where we stop. We deliver in a lot of community venues. We deliver in some of the libraries, where the need is, and equally we're always up for doing things differently. I think in the past we've run lots of workshops where we try and champion some of the services of the libraries. I have to say, I think it was a miss of Bruce not to mention, the e-reader software and the audio books and all these services that you can get online from the libraries that have been crucial to me and my family in the COVID time. And actually there's a lot of people that they may not think that they need to use the tech, but if you show them some of the ways that some of the things they could do that they didn't even know was possible, you can get those hooks in and try and develop it. And that's actually, back on Nicola's slides, the creatively digital courses we run, that's exactly what they're for. They're all unaccredited. Every time we run one of those courses, it's completely different. And it's about, you've got a group and they love photography, right? We'll come in and do a digital photography course. And once that 5 or 10 week course is finished, oh, look, they want to do another one, and they want to now produce a calendar as a group, or they want to produce this as a group, or, and I think they're the sorts of things that we can facilitate and help, very much steered by you and your organizations. I think I'm gonna stop there now. I've covered most of what I wanted to say, and I know we are over, but please do either email me directly or get in touch via Fran, and let's start conversation about how we can work together to serve your communities.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Jamie. We have some time now for questions. So does anyone have any questions of any of our speakers who are still here? Right. Nick.
Thanks, Fran. Sorry, just switching on the camera. Yeah, just one for Jamie and Nicola. Just thanks for that update. I mean, fantastic to hear about all of this. There's so much going on, as with all the other speakers. It's great to just learn about it, and that's sometimes half the battle, isn't it? To understand and to know it's there, and then to hopefully, plug the right people into it, which is great. Just with a thought in my mind around our digital champions program, that these adults that are coming through yourselves in terms of taking up these courses, I presume, as is often said by people trying to enter the job market, they sometimes find it difficult due to lacking experience. I mean, is there an advantage to them in becoming a digital champion, for instance, as we heard from one of the other speakers around volunteering, being a volunteer, being a champion, connected to digital skills training that you're doing, it could be a real advantage on their CV. I mean, is that an opportunity, or is it already happening? Thank you.
I'd just add into there that yes, absolutely it is. When a lot of our learners, where we're working directly with, and I mentioned Felixstowe Job Centre because they're particularly active in wanting to work with us. Yeah, we're always looking at putting together short, sharp programs. You give them some skills. You want them to go away and get some confidence. But one thing that we do with all of those programs is we then, you always endeavour to have an employer come in at the end and talk about their opportunities, and absolutely volunteering. I think that was one of the things that grabbed me about the Food Museum project, actually, is that's another project that I can refer people to, because especially when we run courses at level 1 and level 2, where they're developing, say, Microsoft Office skills and things like that are directly digital skills that are needed for work. You always get a handful of learners on those courses that actually they're more than capable. They've just never had a qualification. So actually that's the most important thing for them. And then you want them to go away and be able to signpost those individuals to the volunteering, because I'm fairly confident as well that the job centres, they make that as like unpaid employment, and they make that a really differentiated thing to employment or to volunteering. They class that if you're actually doing something that is benefiting that organisation, they class it very, very differently. Any opportunity for them to go and build their confidence with their new skills is going to be a real positive. And I think that the digital champions is it's so diverse. It's like it could be somebody that just really knows around mobile phones and broadband connections and stuff, and another person will be super good at using, I don't know, Microsoft Word and that sort of stuff, so I think that absolutely the volunteering is really important. And well, I'm saying that to the VCS, and so I'm like a converted audience perhaps, but I just think that yes, absolutely. And that's something that I know the Workwell Suffolk service that we've got within Realised Futures as well, where they're working with the most vulnerable and the furthest from the job market, they are really, really keen on getting people into volunteering opportunities, because some of the learners certainly that start out in our entry program, they could be potentially 2 to 3 years away from even really being ready to seriously apply for an opportunity. And it takes that time to build those skills, because they'll get all the way through and want to do level 2 IT qual, but at some point before that, you're going to have a conversation with them maybe about their English skills or their maths skills, and that actually you need to do this before you can go on and actually do those things at level 2. You need to be having English skills at level 1, or so yeah, anything around building their confidence.
Right,
Can I just, can I just add to that, Fran? I couldn't find my hand, I'm afraid, there as quickly enough. But yeah, just because obviously Jamie and I sit on the Digital Inclusion Network as well, it might be useful for us to take any of the opportunities that are coming through, like, you know, the Food Museum opportunity, to take them back into the organisations. Obviously, I would feed into Andy Mawby, who, you know, works with Jamie in Realised Futures anyway. So, you know, it would go through Jamie probably in the end anyway, but it might be useful to have that as some coordinating point, that, you know, if we do have people coming through our services, that they can then link into some of the opportunities that are available, just to help to build those skills.
Yeah, brilliant. Good point, Nicola. Thank you. Anna, you have a question.
Yes, not so much a question, but just that, you know, what I've really taken away from today, and thank you for the, you know, for this sort of course on a webinar, is that, you know, it's the opportunity for that partnership working, which is really exciting, because we want to develop digital champions within our organisation. I work for Leading Lives, which is a social care company. We've been involved with some of the Good Things Foundation projects, where we've given some of our customers tablets and things. But our staff are so stretched at the moment, obviously, about the whole recruitment crisis, etc., which we're aware of, that it's really difficult for us to, you know, put extra pressure on our staff to get that digital training themselves to be able to support our customers. And I think there's loads of, you know, there is, you know, it sounds like there are lots of opportunities to be able to link in with other organisations like Realised Futures and the community sort of group as well, you know, to hopefully work together so that, you know, we can perhaps run some courses for our customers, which then our staff would be involved with as well, which might then, you know, give them more confidence. Yeah, so it's our partnership working, which I just think sounds really exciting, and I know was you know, obviously highlighted in the very first slides, but kind of, yeah, sort of having that information network, if you like, so we know who to pick and choose from and who to contact. Yeah, would be so valuable. Obviously, I've written down as much as I can here today, and obviously you're going to share the slides, but I'm sure there are probably other, you know, organisations and groups, obviously, you know, sort of through the network that Nicola mentioned, that, yeah, it'd be great to link up with. And I'm sure Budendi, who's my boss in Lives on business development, who I know has been liaising with Nicola over some of the sort of digital inclusion work. Yeah, it'd be great to sort of get involved and sort of grow that really.
Great, thank you. On the slides and the presentations, we will be sharing those. We are discussing whether we can put those and the video from the Food Museum onto our website, but the presentations will be sent out to all the people who've attended today. We now have our final session, which is the next steps and close, and Nick Kahn, who is the Strategic Director from East Suffolk Council, and also co-chair of the Digital Inclusion Network. So over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fran. And yeah, great session. And I think it's quite heartwarming when you attend sessions like this, because there's so much going on. There's so much commitment, so much enthusiasm, and it's making a difference, you know, to put it bluntly. You know, you're people, all of yourselves out there, you know, you're helping people, and that's key. And the fact that we're talking and sharing this information leads to more of that. You know, we've already, you know, if we kept meeting, and I encourage you to join the network, because this is what happens. You know, we talk, we share information, and something clicks in someone's head, and then something happens as a result of it, which is just fantastic. So it's important to have these. So thank you so much for putting it on. I'll attempt to just quickly, I made some notes as I went along, because this is helpful for me as well, in terms of increasing my knowledge. But just starting with Chris Bally, who's the co-chair, as you just mentioned, Fran, of the Digital Network, sort of, you know, that key statement: you're more likely to be disadvantaged if not online. Simple statement, but it's true. You know, if we all, I was thinking as some of you were talking, imagine if I didn't have my broadband connection, my smartphone. Just thinking of all the things I've done in the last week where I've used, you know, used some sort of digital service or done something digitally. You know, I'd find life extremely difficult, and this is what people are going through every day. They're missing out on services and life in general. So this is really important, and I think Bruce coined it quite well. You know, as the sort of graph of doom is kind of getting better for digital, it's still not a great story, because those left behind, it's going to be even starker for them. So it's really important that we double down our efforts to help those most disadvantaged, because they really will be losing out. And then we moved on to Bruce from Suffolk Libraries. I mean, what a great thing we have in our libraries, and it's so important that we support them. It's so good to see them thrive as hubs, as someone put it. You know, they're much more than what they were in the old days of quietly walking about and just looking at a book. They do so much more, and part of that is their digital offer, which is great, and so many people going through their doors literally, or being helped more sort of remotely with devices. But as Bruce said, the digitally excluded are hard to reach by their very nature. You know, they are some of the most vulnerable in our society. So it's no good doing digital campaigns to reach the digitally excluded. Again, sounds like an obvious point, but it's key that we try to access those people through our front doors. You know, whether they're food banks, or, as Bruce mentioned, leaflet drops, or through customer services, or through through the voluntary sector. It's really important we spot these people in need and signpost them, or help them on site if we can, with all these good things going on. But yeah, great work going on in our libraries. Then we heard from Tracy and Jenna around digital champions. I mean, what a great initiative, that we have there. So many champions being trained up and supported, and they're actually going out there doing this work, helping people and signposting people. And the T and tech, it's much more than, it's always so much more than just providing that digital support. It's a means of people socializing and making friends while they go to these sessions, helping tackle social isolation and building networks and helping people to thrive, which is brilliant. So, as I keep encouraging, and others probably do, the more volunteers we can get, and I know this is something CAS are really great at, building the volunteer network, the more of this we can do. And at a recent session of the county's policy advisory board, a group of councillors who are actually looking into digital inclusion, they're really keen to support this sort of momentum to get us to do more of this, to help more people. So that's really good. And then we heard from Hilary from the Good Things Foundation, and I'll certainly be following up that with Chris and others in terms of the SIM devices, SIM cards, and how key is that in this cost of living crisis, when people are making that harsh decision of, do I heat the home or provide, get food in for myself and my children, or do I let my broadband subscription go, or my expensive mobile phone contract, again, thus losing out on so much. So these things are key practical interventions. So we'll be following that up. And what a great sort of high level network the Good Things Foundation is, with some of that funding that might flow from that. So we'll certainly be connecting in with that. And we heard from Kate from the Food Museum. Great place, by the way, if you haven't been. There's so much to that Food Museum. It's a real sort of boon in Stowmarket, so well worth visiting. But yeah, what a huge project. 38, whatever it was, 40,000 things they're archiving, and this is a real example of how you energize volunteers to tackle something difficult. Imagine if you had to try and do this yourself or pay for it all. It would be really difficult for a sort of charity funded museum to do so. So being really innovative here, and also helping give all those opportunities to volunteers, especially young people who don't ordinarily, or perhaps don't volunteer as much, or they'll stand to be corrected if someone wants to. So that's a really good opportunity. And then we heard from Simon around data protection, which is really important to all of us in this. We have to be mindful of data, but also not to be scared of it, to realize the opportunities that data presents, that we are in a privileged position as in the public sector and voluntary sector. We get a lot of data from people, and that can be, if used in the right way, can be really powerful for social good. You know, we're not using it to sell them double glazing, we're using them to help them. So if we can find ways to share data, that's to be encouraged. And we're certainly trying to do that here in East Suffolk Council in terms of targeting people more, in terms of supporting them. That's something we shouldn't be frightened of. And yeah, the Citizens Advice, what a great partner and what a great organisation they are, and so relied on. And they're a great front door, as we mentioned. And you know, there's so much we do and can do together. So looking forward to exploring more on that. And then we, last but not least, certainly we heard from just now from Nicola and Jamie about all the excellent things they're doing in the digital skills world. I mean, how important is the work you're doing there? Because, you know, it is so important for the future of all employers. And I heard the other day, attending a youth action event in Ipswich, that the future of work will change so quickly, you know, in terms of the skills that employers look for. The things that we think, you know, the job titles we have now in sort of 10 years will be completely different. You know, we already talk now about drone pilots and robotics experts and, you know, digital data miners and all that sort of stuff. That will change again. So to keep a pace of this is really key. We need our you know, young people and adults, you know, we need them to have the right skills. So the work you're doing is so important, and there's lots of connections, as we discussed, within the system. So hopefully that sort of summarised the great things that everyone talked about today. But yeah, just lastly from me, thank you so much everyone for everything you're doing. Please do join the network. Jenna will no doubt circulate the details of that. It's come and go. It's nothing formal. You know, you can attend for part, you can attend one and not attend another. So do come along. And if you want to present something, that would be most welcome as well. I'll certainly follow up some of these leads and actions, and I'm sure other people will as well. And yeah, thanks to Community Action Suffolk for putting this on. It's been really, really good. And I'll hand back to Fran, who might want to cover anything else that I've missed. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Nick. Well, I think that we've had a great morning. There's nothing else really to say apart from that we should all carry on our conversations and carry on working in partnership, because we can achieve such great results. This event was a partnership between the Digital Inclusion Network, Community Action Suffolk, and Suffolk County Council. And we are hoping to work together on events in the future to tackle digital inclusion and to ensure that no one is left behind. So I'll leave it there. Thank you all very much for attending, and a great big thank you to our speakers who've worked really hard to provide a really good range of information and inspiring, thought-provoking presentations today. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.